feel alive!
Oh my god, it's another episode of Castaway Anime. I'm NeonManta. Who the fuck are you?
I am literally Evan, or Ev, or Crunchy Bagels. I have a billion names at this point. I'm going through an identity crisis. Don't mind me.
And why have we gathered here on this most auspicious of days, Evan?
Well, you see, we dedicated, like 5.5 hours of our life, 5.5 hours of what little time we have left on this earth, to the amazing, or I should say infamous, High Guardian Spice, the Crunchyroll original, put in 10 air quotations, anime.
More like High Guardian shite.
Ha ha.
I stole your joke. I stole your joke.
I came up with
I was
that
expecting
joke.
you to make the joke, because you were really proud of it the last time we tried recording this.
I was so proud I was gonna do it later, as it would catch everyone by surprise, but no, you stole it, you joke thief. You've been exposed to the internet.
I stole your source material, just like they stole the show's source material from various other better shows.
Twitter will stone you for being a joke thief.
Oh no, Twitter's fucking gonna stone us regardless. Reddit, everywhere that I'm gonna post this fucking podcast. So, we should probably preface this entire conversation with this. We might say High Guardian Spice is very, very infamous for caking itself in this air of, let's call it, see, I can't even, confidently call it political because be someone like, oh, gendered sexuality isn't political.
I guess you could call it political.
And they're probably right.
It's more of a question of should it be political, but yeah, I'd say this show is at least a little political.
So, I just want to preface the whole conversation with this. Viewer, audience, I don't mean to offend you personally. I only mean to offend you generally, as a faceless, non-conforming blob. This is the Grey Goo scenario in action.
And no matter what we'll say, Twitter will find a reason to hate it, honestly.
Can't wait for the 10 viewers on Twitter. I don't know, the last podcast got 750 views, so maybe this one won't have as broad a reach.
750?
If we combine the two parts into the one.
Yeah. Alright.
Which is pretty good for starting from literally nothing.
Yeah.
Hopefully the SEO and the striking while the iron is relatively hot will propel this one into similar levels of viewership.
It's only mildly cooled off at this point.
As long as Spilling the Milk keeps making videos about it, then it's still relevant, goddammit.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the drama, or just want to cut the turkey right now?
Much like life itself, we must start at the beginning, at the genesis, the origin, the big bang that is High Guardian Spice, or more like the wheezing whimper of the announcement back in summer of 2018. And boy, where were you on that day? I remember where I was. It was like anime 9/11.
That was the day my father left to get milk and never came back.
It's okay. I guarantee you most of the writers in the show have probably had the same thing happen to them and that inspired them to create the show.
Oh god, we're already at those kinds of jokes.
It's okay. We've already put out the disclaimer. We are now immune from criticism.
Hell yeah.
Alright, so back in the summer of 2018, a little company you might have heard of, you might even be familiar with, Crunchyroll, formerly known as Elation at the time, announced that they are creating original content, and not an anime, mind you. Despite being an anime localization company, they were not pooling their resources into having exclusive titles. They were trying to get a brand new original show built from the ground up that is, like you said earlier, 10 quotes anime.
Yeah, it It's on an anime streaming service, and that's about the closest it gets to actually being anime. It's English. All the people who made it, as far as I can tell, are English. Nothing to do with Japan.
So Crunchyroll released a video announcing the brand new original show High Guardian Spice, and it was about as well received as a toaster in a bathtub. Because you can't see it anymore because YouTube in their infinite wisdom nuked the dislike bar, so we can no longer visually see how much people hated it. But I think that's a moot point anyway, considering that Crunchyroll, I'm pretty sure, took down the like, dislike, and comment section of that video.
I was not able to find the original trailer, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But I wouldn't put it past them.
Dude, they hid all that. I'm pretty sure they were. I forget if this was a feature on Twitter at the time. I don't think it was back then. They were hiding replies on their social media about negative comments criticizing the show.
Yeah, I heard because a bit about that.
Granted, it was a shitstorm. People were getting all up in arms. Kind of for some of them for the wrong reasons, a lot of them for the right reasons.
Yeah, so I think when the trailer first dropped, right, like the main thing people were mad about was that, Crunchyroll, they're supposed to be improving their site. They're supposed to be taking the money they get and using it to help out the industry, to improve their site, to make them actually more worthwhile than pirating, considering people have to pay for it. But instead, they're using it on this, not even an anime, to essentially just promote their site to the English-speaking cartoon community, because they wanted more people to come over to their site for the monies. And so people were understandably pissed off and not happy about where their subscription money was going.
With the benefit of hindsight, I kind of don't blame them for using that kind of logic that you just described, considering that most of the more of the popular Western cartoons nowadays are very much anime influenced. Fucking Steven Universe, Amphibia, Owl House, all some of my favorites right now, all anime inspired. So on that front, I will defend the decision, but the trajectory behind it was very much a misfire, considering they were going out of the way to promote the show as this ethnically diverse background of writers, and it's going to be a diverse show, they said, with a diverse team behind it, which went counterintuitive to the video package that they were showing of behind the scenes look of what appeared to be mostly, if not all, English white women, which is the opposite of a diverse cast.
It was basically, I guess the only reason they called it diverse was just there weren't any white men on there. So congratulations, very, very diverse. You just had white women, tons of races,
Bro, I'm
every color of the rainbow.
Bro, I'm telling you, the straight white men are the truly most oppressed group in this country today. Get your black pills ready, boys.
Oh God.
So, the High Guardian Spice is created by Ray Rodriguez, a trans man, who, according to Wikipedia, their biggest credential was a character designer on the 2017 Amazon Prime Video series Danger and Eggs, which I have only ever heard of once around the time when it came out from a YouTube video and never gave it a sparing thought until High Guardian Spice came out again.
I have not heard of that show.
From looking into it online, it looked like it was another similar kind of I have to it sucks that I have to like fucking pick my words carefully. I was gonna say pro LGBT or overtly LGBT themed show, and it's like a fucking minefield, because I mean, I know we made the funny disclaimer, but I guess just to avoid the crucifixion, I personally, well, I'll speak for both of us on this one. We have nothing against the LGBT community. I'm very much fucking. My favorite show right now is The Owl House, which
My
cannot
favorite
be.
my favorite slice of life has dragon lesbians in it. It's okay.
It's a very good. They can just kind of be up their own asses sometimes, in my opinion. In my opinion, I won't speak for you on this one.
I haven't really seen most of the sort of pro LGBT Western shows except for High Guardian Spice. I've heard that
Ooh, you
Steven
picked a
Universe...
bad one
Oh,
to.
God.
You picked a bad one to introduce yourself to the community with. Go on about Steven Universe.
I've heard just from ER's review that Steven Universe is kind of up its own ass with it, but also at the same time, it's ER. I'm not sure how much I trust him on that one.
Yeah, that one is one of the rare ERLs. Steven Universe is my favorite cartoon of all time. It is slowly might be getting supplanted by the Owl House, depending on how they stick the landing with their second half of season 2 and the finale tragically cut short. Fuck you, Disney. So getting it back on track again. After the initial announcement and backlash of High Guardian Spice, that show went fucking radio silent for 2 years. The promotional materials said it was going to come out in 2019, and here we are. It came out October 2021, and between then and now, fucking nothing. It's static, white noise. Presumably placed in development hell. Reasons I don't think are 100% crystal clear.
I imagine it was probably just because of how immense the backlash was, but then I imagine they were waiting for it to die down, so they would be like, okay, everyone's forgotten about this, we can finally just release it with no acclaim or fanfare, and then everyone cared again, and everyone hated it. So I guess their plan didn't really work out.
I definitely think that was what they did. I think, I read some sources that Rodriguez, the creator, said that the show had wrapped production, like all 12 of the episodes were like over and done with in like 2019, late 2019, I think. And the reason that it took him so long to finally drop it was to wait for all of that backlash to die down, because they didn't want the bad publicity surrounding it, but the internet never forgets, especially when you make a big enough shitstorm that the announcement of High Guardian Spice did.
The internet, I don't know. The internet's memory is simultaneously 2 seconds and 2,000 years. It's crazy.
You gotta make a big enough splash to garner the long-term hatred. Like, you gotta do something horrible, or maybe even don't have to, because, like, remember the fucking Logan Paul suicide thing, and now he's one of the... As much as I hate you saying this, I just kind of have to face the facts here. This little Occam's razor. Logan Paul is one of the most popular boxers today. And I with a massive qualification, massive asterisk next to that statement. So, like,
a row of about
do we know?
50 asterisks.
So now here we are. What do you think? What do you think of High Guardian Spice? Just general first impressions.
You know, it's not as bad as I expected. I expected it to be around a 2 out of 10, judging from the group watch we did. That was like the first 3 episodes. I was like, okay, this seems really boring, really basic. But once I was sort of alone and there to just like soak in the show in its entirety, rather than sort of being half distracted, its good aspects hit me harder. Now, granted, the bad aspects also hit me harder. But I'd say most of the time I was not completely bored. It's certainly not a good show, but it is not terrible, I will say.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Watching it, I did feel a sense of, if I were not watching this for the podcast, I would never have ever finished the show, unless we were also like to, in a group watch with friends, to take the piss out of. But it is, I've watched it, and it is not the worst thing I've ever seen. I have definitely seen worse, but it is not a good show.
Like, when I was watching it, and I mean, the obvious answer to this question is because muck controversy and Crunchyroll is a hack company, and this show should have never existed because our subscription money shouldn't be going to an English quote-unquote anime. when it should be going to improving the site and helping the industry. But because this show shouldn't have existed at all, I think that's why people were predisposed to hating it. Whereas I think if it had just released normally from like just some average fucking English cartoon company, released onto like Cartoon Network or something, I think it would have gotten like average reception, because it's just bad. It's just normal bad. Like, I can think of a billion anime with like a 7 out of 10 average score that are infinitely worse than this. This is just normal, run-of-the-mill bad. If I weren't watching it for the podcast, would have probably dropped at around episode 5 or 6. But I ended up finishing it, and yeah, it's just normal bad. It's not terrible.
You would have made it fucking halfway into the show with just on your own before dropping it?
Well, I probably would have dropped it at episode 1, but if I was dedicated to giving it like a second chance, I probably would have made it around halfway through before being like, yeah, it's kind of more bad than good, so I'll just be like, drop it.
I can't remember, because we watched the first 3 episodes in that group call, and then we watched the other 9 episodes individually. I can't remember if there was like the specific part in one of the earlier episodes that I would have been like, all right, no, fuck this show, and then dropped it out of spite. You know what? Knowing me, I probably just would have dropped it after the first episode. Even we don't even get to meet the full main cast by that point, but I probably just would have been very much turned off by the show itself. So I guess the only thing left is to break down the entire show for the next fucking 4 hours. Surely we'll have many an intelligent thing to say about High Guardian Spice that can fill 4 hours of time and not blaze through this in like an hour.
Hopefully we can wax idiotic about this for long enough to fill up that time.
Speaking of waxing idiotic, man, the theme songs, as in the opening and ending theme songs, how about those, hey?
The opening is god-awful. The ending I almost like in spite of itself, because like the lyrics are obviously cheesy as hell, but it's almost kind of has like a sweet vibe, but then the auto-tune is too much for me. It's like, no, without that, it'd be tolerable.
I didn't even detect any auto-tune. I thought they were just layering on the audio and mixing it kind of poorly. I'm in like the opposite boat. I think the way that the opening theme is constructed visually is very boring and generic. And the lyrics, while it's poorly sung, like the lyrics at least are like all right. It's very cheesy. And then the ending theme has actually visuals I really like. The only problem is every time it would come on, I would have to mute it or just skip to the next episode if I didn't care enough, because goddamn, I cringe. I cringe hearing the fucking characters sing.
Yeah, I really like the visuals on the ED of just the little cute characters, sort of bouncing
I think
around.
the ED has the best artwork in the show. My favorite little bit of like character chemistry that they display within the show comes from that one picture in the ED where I say ED, it's not a fucking anime, where Rosemary is reaching for Time's cake, and then she like is staring daggers at her and blocking her with her fork, and while the other 2 characters are laughing. That's good. I like that. That tells me a lot about their personalities.
I don't really remember that too much, mostly because I would tab out the second the episode was over to like write something in my notes.
The only bad part about it is, much like the cake Rosemary is trying to perform a devious lick of, it is way too saccharine sweet. They sing about like all the friendships and hugs and fucking sharing hot cocoa. It's like, I can feel like my blood sugar evaporating, or like it's giving me diabetes.
I imagine the intention was to make it so sickly sweet that it's funny and like sort of endearing, but I don't think it really
failed.
Yeah, it failed. It failed pretty hard. The lyrics are just kind of insufferable. I think if they mellowed it out and focused a little more on like sort of sweet vibes rather than just friendship, yay. The stuff like maybe like singing about sitting down at a campfire and drinking hot cocoa or something like that, or like roasting marshmallows. I think that could have worked. With all the cheesy friendship is magic stuff, it's kind of bang your head against the table and groan as your forehead is bleeding worthy.
Yeah, I could not agree more. After the group watch, like, just also because I was trying to like get through the episodes as fast as possible. As soon as the ED came up, I was like, yeah, no, skip. Like, as much as I do enjoy seeing all the admittedly cute artwork in the ED, I just couldn't stand it anymore. Like, the lyrics tanked it for me.
Understandable.
So while we're talking about audio issues, the voice acting, it is.
I will say that most of the characters did not annoy me. Although, to be fair, I have a pretty low bar for what I count as good voice acting. I tend to not pay much attention to it. The only one that really got on me, aside from a few parts where I was like, that didn't really land. Aside from a few parts like that, the only one that really got on my nerves was Slime Boy, who was consistently...
Yeah. Oh my god. I had the same exact note. I was prepared. I was prepared to transition into that, but there you go. I'm glad we have the same thought then.
His voice acting was just... you know what? Do you want to do an impression, or should I do an impression?
Please, go ahead.
So hello. How's it going? I just, I was just drinking some alcohol on the couch yesterday, and it was pretty good. How about you?
Yep, that is exactly his inflections. I've got a fucking bone to pick with Slime Boy. And I know that whatever few High Guardian Spice fans there are, and even the people who don't like the show, I see online that the general consensus is that Slime Boy is one of the more beloved characters, which I can understand somewhat. I do get what they were going for. He's supposed to be the mellow, like mega chillaxed one, and he's a little socially awkward, kind of stumbles through his words. Most definitely probably autistic. So they could probably relate, haha. But what bothers me about him is not his delivery. Well, not just his delivery. There's a different reason that bothers me, but I'll get into that in a bit. His audio quality is noticeably different and worse than literally all of the other characters.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of other people.
Can't understand why. Because this show allegedly wrapped production in 2019 before the pandemic could cause any kind of audio quality recording issues that I have seen in shows like Inside Job recently on Netflix could have caused. But no, this is just a thing that happens for some reason, and it's not like his voice quality is different for like a character trait reason, that like the character himself has a canonical reason why he would sound different. It just is, and it bothers me.
It's like the voice actor just like snuck into his fridge to like get rid of background noise and was like, okay, I'll record my lines in here because my family is having dinner.
The other thing I hate about him is that the character animation that they do for him does not match up with his mannerisms or inflection at all. Like, you would think he'd be kind of like fidgeting, he'd be kind of doing like little twitching or something like he'd be like he didn't know what to do with his hands kind of guy.
Yeah.
But his body is almost always static. His like the only character animation that matches his mannerisms and inflections is like when his eyes are like darting left and right. Like, he doesn't often look the people he's talking to in the eye. Which that makes sense, but I'd feel like he'd be moving or like fidgeting a little bit more, like squirming a little.
I feel like the way his animation looked, it looked more like he'd have like a sort of steady but muted voice where like you can still tell he's a bit anxious, but that it's still, not as sort of rushed and like tripping over his lines as it is in the show, but the animation just doesn't sell him. You're right on that.
One more thing about him. Why the fuck is he called Slime Boy? He's a bard. I don't think we ever see him interact with slimes.
Apparently, the explanation in the show, I think, is that it was a nickname people gave him because of some kind of backstory with slimes. I kind of forget, but I guess it's.
But we don't even like see a flashback to it.
Yeah, I guess it's just trying to be quirky.
It's definitely a lol quirky XD so random moment,
Yeah.
and it only served to annoy me. So good job on that one.
It did not annoy me, but it did not endear me either. It was just kind of a yep, that is a thing that exists in this show. Moving on.
While we're on the subject of the character animation, the animation itself, much like the voice acting, is
You know, it's better than like your average anime seasonal shit. Like, you know, you look at like Banished from the Heroes Party. Yes, I know I like that one, but shut up. Realist Hero. You know, it's better than that kind of animation, but it's not great.
It's like the colors. I like the colors. It's definitely more alive than the shows you just described.
Oh, for sure.
But as far as the animation goes, it ranges from average to bad. Like I don't know if you noticed it. I noticed it a couple times while watching. When a character is like trying to leave out of frame, instead of them walking out of frame, they will blink out of existence. And really, to their half their credit, it is a little hard to detect because when they disappear, it's usually a frame or two behind when they make the next camera cut. So that's how they try to hide it, but it did not escape some of the more eagle-eyed viewers on social media.
I did not notice that, although I have heard other people comment about that problem, so, you know, it's definitely a thing. I just am not as attentive.
The background art is also kind of inconsistent. When it's just like big landscape shots, I think it's serviceable. When it's trying to do more detailed like room environments, it's all right until we get to bread.png and then it becomes very much not all right.
Some of the indoor scenes did look a bit like does that background really fit the style of the show? It looks kind of drab and dull and ugly. And then obviously, yeah, the bread.png just taking images from online. You know, I wonder, with how much time this show spent in sort of development hell, couldn't they have fixed some of that stuff? Didn't they have the time
they definitely
to at least
could've.
draw bread?
They had at least a year to fix that, and I think there was another issue with a lamppost. I think, to my knowledge, those were the only moments that occurred of where they just took a picture and didn't like draw over it to make it look like it belongs in the world.
I didn't see.
There might be more that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I didn't see any from the remainder of the show. I'm sure it's probably in there somewhere. I do remember in episode 1, I was sort of like more attuned to the .png stuff, and so I was like looking at this scene where they're in a fruit mart, and all of the fruits are just .pngs. Like, clearly taken from online.
Oh my god, it's fucking Fire Emblem 3 Houses.
But yeah, I'm sure there's more, but I didn't pick up on any throughout most of the show.
Yeah, also because I couldn't really be fucked enough to like pay my undivided attention to like every single visual element on screen for this show as I would for shows that I like, such as Amphibia and Owl House. I know we glossed over it a little already, but I kind of want to swing it back around to the voice acting performances because we just focused on Slime Boy. As far as everyone else goes, they range, much like the animation, it ranges from average to pretty bad.
I'd say the majority of them were just okay. And in fact, I'd even say that at times the voice acting could get pretty good, but then every once in a while there'd be this line that didn't quite hit the delivery, and I'd be like, oof, that kind of takes me out.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't help that some of the characters' deliveries, the biggest culprit of this is definitely Sage. Her delivery is often awkward and in desperate need of additional takes that they just didn't do. It feels like they did more of a one and done. They read the line out loud, and then that was the take that they went with. Like, it was like the first time that they ever saw the script, and they read it into the microphone for the first time ever, and they were like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah, there are definitely times where it can feel like that, and one sort of, I guess this is a nitpick about episode 1, but there were all, like, the characters were constantly laughing in episode 1. They'd say a line, and then the characters sort of canonically would laugh. And the laugh each and every single time sounded just awkward enough to drive me up the fucking wall. I was like, that doesn't sound natural. That's not how people laugh. You sound like some AI trying to be a human. That this looks like the test run of Google.ai recreate human laugh.
As far as Sage goes, yeah, her delivery definitely probably the most inconsistent and, well, inconsistent in quality, consistently the worst delivery in the show, and which is unfortunate because she's one of the two big main characters, and not counting our other two slightly more main characters, but not as main. Because it's definitely the Rosemary and Sage show featuring Time and Parsley at times, which brings us to our 4 characters. So why don't you go down the list?
We've got Rosemary, Sage, Parsley, and Time. All of them having the names of flowers and spices.
They're spices, except not actually, because they're actually herbs. They are used as spices in cooking, but they are herbs.
Every time.
So the show should have been called High Guardian Herbs.
Every time I heard Time, I would just think of the cognate time, tick-tock on a clock, you know? And I just couldn't get that out of my head.
I did have that same issue, because, like, I feel like 1 or 2 times, because, like, most of the time I was able to pick up on, like, all right, they're talking about the character, but then, like, once or twice in the show, when they say the word time, and I have to be like, okay, in the context of their speaking, are they talking about Time the character or Time the concept?
This is why Time isn't a name in real life. Or maybe it is, I don't know.
I doubt it. If it is, it's not a good name. Don't PSA Time. Don't name your kids Time.
The kid named Time would be like, every time someone looks at a clock, they just look over like, are they talking about me?
It's one of those, okay, class, it's time to finger paint, and then the kid named Paint gets all worried moment. So as far as the main cast goes, Rosemary, I can tolerate. She is not a great lead, and she kind of annoys me sometimes.
Rosemary was probably one of the worst of the main cast, in my opinion. She is, yeah, like you said, sometimes a bit annoying. She's not energetic enough to be endearing. It's not like, what's a good example of this? For some reason I'm forgetting her name, but from Sangatsu no Lion, one of the girls. I'm trying to remember her name. I think, no, Momo's the little child.
While you remember her name, I'll bring up another example. It's kind of like, She definitely reminded me of Akko from Little Witch Academia, where she is Akko, kind of like Rosemary, is a little standoffish and a little headstrong, but unlike Akko, Rosemary is not really out of her depth, whereas Akko is, because she is a human with no magical power in a school of witches trying to learn to become a witch, and is still trying to act like not necessarily act, more like she thinks she can be as good as the other witches, which there's no evidence saying that she can't directly, but a lot of the people around her like to tear her down for it, but she maintains that positive attitude, which naturally makes her endearing, whereas Rosemary is already a pretty talented swordsman, so it's kind of hard to get behind her when she's already, like, just naturally energetic and upbeat.
Yeah, it's sort of missing,
and already good at stuff.
Sort of missing the depth that sort of character would have, and like the endearment. And also, I did end up remembering her name. Her name is Hinata, and she like takes the energy of Rosemary to sort of a new extreme, but in a way that's also very sweet and endearing. And it's like, even if you don't have that sort of struggle, you can still make just that personality on its own fun and endearing, and like make me love the character that way. But Rosemary is she just feels kind of like basic, energetic main character, not really all that interesting, just stays very comfortably within her trope.
Then Sage, she is definitely my least favorite of the four, not just because of her awkward delivery, but because she's usually the cause of several of the like problems within the show, and is, you would think Rosemary would be the more standoffish one, but Sage, the quiet reserved one, well, quiet reserved is in shy, not like quiet reserved is in Time, who is the stoic one. Sage is a shy hit girl who is in the throes of old magic in a world where old magic is being kind of made obsolete. It's a little unclear because old magic comes into play later in the show as being important again, but it's mostly a world of new magic. They don't make it exceptionally clear what the difference between old magic and new magic is, aside from utilizing like runes and special glyphs, as opposed to just having a staff that has the magic all built in for you.
Yeah. I didn't really get the difference at all, but apparently there is one, and Sage is, she's an old magic user because her family sort of grew up in sort of instilling in her that old magic is the way to go, new magic bad, don't use it, don't even experiment with it, just don't use it at all. But beyond that sort of like always using old magic and like feeling compelled to because of her family, which is a decent enough sort of amount of depth that that actually worked for me in terms of Sage's character. But other than that, I always felt like her presentation and her actual personality were, I guess, not at odds with each other, but sort of incongruous. It's like they didn't match up at all. So whenever she's talking to Rosemary, right, Sage is generally cheerful. She doesn't really come off as a bookworm who like is shy. She's more shy in presentation than in personality. And I guess that sort of made the character very... They just didn't sell me on the idea that she's shy. She just reads sometimes. And it's like, okay, well, I guess, but like... You haven't really sold me on this character at all. So she's probably the most boring of the four main characters.
Yeah, I did not care for Sage much. The other two, though, I wish were the actual main characters of the show. Parsley, she is decent. She is like the average baseline of what I would consider to be a good character that I would want to see more of. She is a portly little dwarf girl who is an expert level blacksmith prodigy, starts off at the academy in the first year, gets bumped up immediately to the third year of her blacksmithing class, and she's usually the straight man to to Rosemary and Sage's antics, and is usually the voice of reason around them. And the most notable thing about her background is that she comes from a family of a mother and a father who did not learn to pull out. And she's got like 15 siblings, maybe?
Something like that. Even Parsley's lost count. So it's okay if you get the number wrong.
Oh yeah, they do make a joke about that. I did like that joke.
Parsley is... I wouldn't consider her the baseline of like a good character, like you said. But she is okay.
Well, it's like... Yeah, it's like, if this is like the standard bare minimum of like what I consider to be like a character that I'm willing to look more into, to watch more of an adventure of, like, whereas Rosemary and Sage are below that line.
See, I think I was sort of predisposed to not liking Parsley as much as you did, because very recently before this show, I saw a very similar character to Parsley in the form of Saya from Bang Dream, who was my favorite character in that show because she's literally just Parsley but with more depth to her. She is very industrious and chill and sort of Like a straight man, not necessarily a voice of reason, because Saya was unreasonable in her own ways, but still more of a voice of reason than the characters around her. So I guess Parsley is a lot more reasonable than Saya would be, but still, Saya was the more interesting of the two. And so Parsley was just sort of like, this is Parsley, or this is Saya, but less good. So, you know, she's fine, but she's not like, I'm not captured by her. I can't actively go like, woo, go Parsley. I want you to succeed. It's just kind of like, yep, that's a character.
But is Saya a blonde, portly, thick, short stack dwarf girl?
No, but Saya's far prettier. Fight me.
I'll have to see a picture of her first, and I'll get back to you on that. As far as the actual best character of the four, I do actually really like Time.
Time is... Honestly, I didn't like her as much as Parsley, but she's also just fine. She's, you know, the sort of the standoffish, quiet, not really talking much, but whenever she does talk, is normally very frank or aggressive. She's okay.
I do tend to like that character trope. Part of the reason that Time ended up being my favorite of the four was because she tended to have the best dialogue of the four. Every time she would say something, it's either to like dryly, no sugarcoating, point something out, or to just call out Rosemary on her stupidity. Like she's definitely the most bully character of the four. And as someone who dislikes Rosemary, I do like watching her get put down, so I get a little enjoyment vicariously through it.
I do think that Time was a little... Because one of my main problems with this show is that it leans very heavily into sort of childish melodrama that I can't really give a shit about. And at the beginning, Time was sort of one of the propagators of that. She was like very heavily against Rosemary from the beginning, which justifiably so, I'll be honest. You know, Rosemary was being a dumb fuck and swinging a sword around. But I didn't like that she was sort of one of the characters pushing that melodrama part of the show forward. But once she sort of made her way into the main cast and sort of solidified her position there, she became a much more likable character to me. And I, by the end, enjoyed her presence on screen enough that I was like, yep, she's one of the better characters.
I think the staff might have liked Time the best too, because for some reason she's the only one of the four who has like a narrative stakes, or a stake in the narrative rather. Like she is the only one of the four who has like an immediate obtainable goal. Like Rosemary's main goal to become a guardian is to one day find her mother, who's been missing for, what was it? Was she missing for months or years? I think it was years. Okay, she's been missing for years, and she's gonna go out, search the world for her. She is the see, inspiration from the staff.
Oh
yet
God,
again. Shining through. As far as that goal goes, though, it's kind of like that is the I want to be the Pirate King Hokage, the strongest Soul Reaper kind of goal, where we know that it will be the natural end point of the show, but the process to get there is going to be very long, and a lot of what Rosemary does is not directly contributing to that goal, but to the broader like sub goal of, in order to find her, I gotta become a guardian, so I gotta do guardian shit. I gotta learn to do guardian shit, rather. Sage does not have a goal. And if she did, it was either so dull that I just completely forgot about it, or they just didn't give her one. Like, please, correct me if I'm wrong. What is Sage's goal in this show?
I think Sage's goal was just to become a guardian like the rest of them, but not as strongly as Rosemary's goal, I guess. Like, you know, Rosemary really wants to be a guardian and really wants to see her mom again, whereas Rosemary, it's just sort of implied by the narrative, as far as I can remember, that she also... I mean, clearly they all want to become guardians, so I guess they all have a goal in that sense. but she doesn't have one that's like
Yeah,
specific
but
to her.
what is Sage's end game after that? What does she want to do after becoming a guardian?
To be Rosemary's best friend, and
To be her gay lesbian lover.
or that,
Because
yes.
holy shit, it is very overt how gay they are, and it's very allegedly.
Well, Rosemary
But it is hilarious.
Rosemary seems to be straight, but Sage definitely isn't.
Done. They do bring up in one episode, I forget which number it was, but they do one character directly asks Sage if she has a crush on Rosemary, and she is flustered by it, and she does say that she has a hard time imagining herself in a position where she could be her girlfriend, but it seemed more like not as a hard disconfirmation, but more of a she is embarrassed by the idea, but she lacks the self-confidence or like the worthiness to be in that position, and feels like she's just more suited to be. She is better where she is as her friend, but is not taking the possibility out of the question.
Yeah, so maybe they'll get together in the season 2 that
They definitely
probably
definitely
won't come.
the season 2, I would bet money against it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Parsley has the same kind of problem, unfortunately. She wants to be a guardian, and she wants to be a really good blacksmith like her family, but what's her end goal after that?
To become the master blacksmith. That's about it.
Yeah, that's a little too vague for my liking, Chief. So that is the one thing holding Parsley's character back from being like baseline to a little nicer. Time, aside from Rosemary, is the only one who has an actual achievable end game goal, because she comes from the fairy woods where her home forest is because she's an elf. Her home forest is being overrun with a rot that is killing her crops, killing her trees, killing her homeland, and her father went out on a quest to find a cure for the rot, and she has not been able to contact him. He's not necessarily lost like Rosemary's mom is, but Time really wanted to go with him on his quest, but was unable to because she lacks the skills. So she's going to become a guardian to help her father deal with the rot. So not only is she have some of the best lines and dialogue in the show and has the most personality of the four, now she also has a goal that is achievable and can be within reach, because she does find a way to cure the rot with that healing water that they find in one episode. And all she has to do is figure out how to either get it again or replicate the formula, so that way she can go back home and cure the rot.
Yeah, her goal is probably the most specific and will probably be achieved, I imagine, a little bit before the others, because the rest are very nebulous, sort of, I want to be the best.
I want to be the best like no one ever was.
Exactly.
To be gay isn't my real test. To be a lesbian is my cause.
I'm going to be the best gay person.
Man, you'd be hard-pressed to find too many straight people in this show. You'd be even harder pressed to find too many straight male characters that are not evil.
How many straight people are in this show, actually? I'm very curious.
Let's go down the list. We're counting only ones that we have seen visually. So, Rosemary's parents, because obviously, Parsley's parents, we have 15 kids worth of visual proof of that. Time's parents,
so all the parents, maybe Rosemary.
I think that's it. I mean, the blonde boy might be Like I'm just going off of like hard evidence, hard direct primary sources.
Confirmed straight characters.
I think that's probably it.
You know, it doesn't offend me that there aren't like that many straight characters, but it's funny.
I'm playing it up. What I'm not playing up though is how fucking hilarious it is that almost every straight male character in the show is a bad guy.
I definitely noticed
Like-
it with Blondie. I don't think the one in episode 12, or was it how many?
Mandrake?
12. What was he? confirmed
Mandrake-
to be
well,
straight?
Well, not he wasn't confirmed to be gay either. So maybe it's just the white male and both of us immediately assuming the heteronormativity. But there are also not a lot of male characters in the show, and a lot of the men are bastards, or they're either bastards or they get in the way. Like even a character who's not a bad person, like Parsley's father, does like try to stop her from being a guardian and to be like, oh, we're not able to keep up with the work and the kids at home. We need to have you back so you can help. But Parsley does get offended by it, and we are supposed to side with our main characters in most conflicts. So Parsley's dad just gets put on the shit list by default.
I'm also not really, you know, I honestly wouldn't have even noticed the lack of male characters unless people, like, without people pointing it out to me. Because, like, I'm so used to watching, you know, cute girls doing cute things anime and, like, you know, like, all the anime that have, like, one or two male characters who are, like one main character and, like, one side male character, and then they're just all women from there on out. So my brain has just sort of learned to tune it out and not notice.
Don't get me wrong. I definitely would not be comedically harping on this issue as much as I am, if not for the background of the show and its marketing.
Yeah,
like Snap.
Yeah, I don't blame you for harping on it. There's just too many comedic opportunities.
Snapdragon he starts off as one of the bully characters. We'll get more into his change through the end, but I guess we can half count him. The purple-haired kid who's the bully, like the not the little twink boy, but his relative. I forget his name. He is like the biggest asshole on the show.
The one who wore the tux,
villains.
Right?
Yeah. I do find it, now that I think about it, it is now even funnier to me that the main like big three head honchos are women, and the big bad villains, the final bosses of the shows, are all men.
It's whatever.
I just can't help but stroke my chin and go, the patriarchy is evil, who would have guessed? Alright, before we start breaking down the series at a whole, we gotta start with what is greeted to us even before the theme song of every episode. If you are watching the show on Crunchyroll or Verve, as I did, I doubt you did.
I actually did watch it on Crunchyroll.
Oh, alright.
For once, I did
then
not.
You have
pirate.
also seen the. Then you definitely saw the viewer discretion is advised warning at the start of every episode.
Oh god, yes. Wow, there's 2 drops of blood. Holy shit! Children can't watch this.
Well, to Devil's Advocate, there is a lot more than 2 drops of blood later in the show. But this brings us to what is, in my opinion, the most damning bit of criticism against High Guardian Spice. Its biggest issue, its tone is wildly inconsistent.
I want to hear your points first.
All right, so the whole time, like throughout the first like 2 episodes, I'm pretty sure it was. They hit you with the viewer discretion, and you can watch the 2. You could take out that viewer discretion warning at the start of those first 2 episodes, watch them through, and be like, yeah, this is definitely a kid show. This is a show made with kids, general audience in mind. It is appropriate for my children to watch. And then you get to episode 3, where they have a flashback of Rosemary's mom, who's like one of the biggest, greatest adventurers in the world. And she's fighting a dragon, and she stabs the dragon, and there's blood coming out. And I believe they also start introducing the occasional curse word. I don't think they ever get any worse than like shit or damn, but it is off-putting to hear this colorful, kid-friendly vibe show. That's the vibe it gives off, and then to suddenly introduce the blood and the swearing, and it feels like you could so easily remove those elements and maintain it as a kid's show. Like, the whole show feels like it doesn't need these adult themes, and I'm very much pro put adult themes in children's media, or like make Western animation that for more mature audiences, what I wouldn't give to have fucking Owl House, but more mature, and like on a platform like Adult Swim where they could get away with a lot more violent things. But it doesn't feel like it feels like it's at odds with each other. Like this kid-friendly vibe, and then occasionally it's not even like a Madoka thing either, where like it's got this cutesy coat of paint, and then you peel back the layers, and there's a layer of darkness underneath. Because the thing with Madoka is when they drop the hat, it like that atmosphere stays with you. You're like, oh, this is the kind of show that is. They pulled a bait and switch on me. But with High Guardian Spice, it'll be kitty, 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 and then the occasional inserting of blood and cursing, and then it immediately goes back to kitty, 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 and then we'll once again sprinkle in a little blood, maybe a little more often cursing than before. And it feels like they could either have gone in the direction of just make it completely kiddie, or just make it more adult, make it more serious, and they chose to do neither, and now it feels inconsistent.
I definitely agree with you on this point. It always felt jarring when the characters would say shit. That was so bad. Oh, you're such a bastard. It's like, this is a kid's show. Like, I know it's technically not a kid's show. There's that parental advisory warning. It's very...
Yeah, that's the thing, though. It's technically not a kid's show. You can't be showing your kids this show, or else they're gonna get to the part where they fucking tear open... I'm very sorry that I have to spoil one of what would have been one of my favorite talking points later down the line. But the part where they fucking slice open a sea serpent's stomach by accident, and he's just bleeding everywhere, and then they have to fucking put him down with a sword through the brain to as a mercy kill, and it gets like weirdly serious, and the tone like hard shifts, and it's such fucking whiplash, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. we were having fun mermaid adventures like 5 minutes ago.
To be fair, I didn't hate the tone switch on that one. It certainly wasn't as effective as it could be, though. It didn't really hit me in the feels as it should have.
Well, the reason for that is because we were in happy fun time magical girl transformation mermaid land, and we were just dealing with a sea serpent gone rogue, and we're so used to most of our situations not resorting in bleeding or like anything heavily serious or dark as putting down this wounded animal, so that way we as a mercy kill. And then here we are. Then now it's like it is dropped on you. It's like a car crash. It's sudden.
Yeah, I think they could have gotten away with it. But they
could have gotten away with it if they were more consistent with the adult occurrences happening. But they happen so infrequently that when they do show up, it's tonal whiplash.
Well, see, I think another way they could have sold it is if the animation had, like, changed or something like that, or, like, they add more drama to the serpent being hit, just anything at all to make it sink in more. Like as the sort of beam goes through the serpent, but as it is, they're like messing around with the laser, and then it just sort of happens without much fanfare until the sort of serpent is already on the beach, you know? I think there should have been something more dramatic going on in the animation, some sort of like visual tone shift,
like a slow mo,
yeah,
maybe like a contrasting silhouette of like a white background.
yeah.
The sea serpent is all like black, and then there's a squirt of red blood cascading against the white and black. The music cuts. There's like a slow mo. The facial animation of like Sage changes from like one of struggling to maintain the beam to like one of horror at the actions that are occurring.
I will say the facial expressions
don't do that. It's like all
facial expressions did not sell their horror at all to me in that scene, and I think that was another thing that probably could have heightened the tone and made it work.
That is one of my general notes of the show, is that the facial expressions of the characters they rarely change, and they rarely go off model for exaggerated effect when they very desperately need to at times. Like going back to the ED, that's when I think the facial expressions, which is kind of cheating because they're still images and not animation, but even like the reaction images, like there's this one shot of Time in the ED seeing a ghost and getting like scared shitless, and her eyes go from the usual like white irises. No, not white iris. Like the white with the I believe her eyes are green normally, and then they go like the comedic. Her eyes are now just a white circle with like a sketchy black outline that are like, it's not even a perfect circle. It's like several circles that intersect and overlap with one another, and it's really sketchy and rough, and it's used for comedic effect, and I like that. And they sometimes do that in the show, but it's so rare and infrequent that like what all the other facial expressions are just kind of stiff and kind of unchanging and kind of lifeless. Yeah, that's a running theme throughout High Guardian Spice. It feels like it's a show that was half-baked, could have used more time in the oven, and as a result, all of its, most if not all of its elements feel like they were half done, like it was a rush or sloppy job. Like we're like touching back to all the bases, the voice acting is inconsistent in quality. Some of the backgrounds are inconsistent with like some of it's hand drawn. You'll get the occasional bread.png. The character animation itself is like ranges from it's fine, it's serviceable, to the characters will blink out of existence, or they'll like shake a drawing instead of have them actually animate running. There's a shot in one of the fight scenes where Rosemary's rushing towards the camera with a sword, but instead of actually animating her like bouncing up and down a little to indicate that she's running, they just like shake her drawing a little bit like left and right, like you could do in After Effects, and it looks sloppy and bad.
It really does hit home for like basically everything in this show. It's very much a not fully realized production. I think that the staff had ideas, but they didn't have the talent to fully realize them and make it, you know, especially with the world building. It's like it has these ideas of like new and old magic, the rot. You know, like new magic can do basically anything, and old magic is antiquated, but somehow combining because, and you know, that's the end of the statement.
Reasons.
Because reason. It's like,
yeah, that's one of the most that's one of the worst parts about the show, that you can see, if you watch it, you can see that there is a foundation for a show here, but it's like a solid foundation, but it's built together with like fucking twigs and half like chewed up Lincoln logs. It's all flimsy.
It's like the basic.
It's a flimsy construction.
Yeah, but it's fine. There's something here. It is not a nothing. There is a basic foundation.
My heart is not made of stone. When I saw that little scene of Rosemary and Sage, like seeing the dancing students in the academy dance, and they do a little dance together, and they trip and fall over each other, and they laugh. I'm not made of stone. I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. And there is, like you said, they have the chemistry. They have like the basics down. But they choose to only have the basics and not go beyond, and then that problem spirals into like several other problems that infect the show.
I feel like that's
And
another
it's
reason.
kind of sad to see.
Yeah. I feel like that's another reason why I almost felt like I felt perplexed watching it. Like, this is getting a score. Why? It has the basics
Well,
down.
it's only getting that because it's getting review bombed.
True. But
because these people did not watch a single episode. Most of those people leaving the 1 out of 10 did not watch a single episode. They just saw the Twitter clips, or maybe they didn't even see the Twitter clips. They just saw that it came out. It's like, oh, sweet, now I can just fucking bomb it.
To be fair,
and that's why it has like a 1.2 on IMDb.
Yeah, to be fair, I think a lot of it is just general vitriol at Crunchyroll, which, to be fair, it's also very justified vitriol. But
you can pirate Crunchyroll. It is always morally correct. I know we've already touched on the viewer discretion and the inconsistency of everything else, but I just have one more note that I didn't want to pass up on. Do you remember that one scene in the episode, which I feel like is also very emblematic of the horribly inconsistent tone, where they're in the botany class, I think, and they're dealing with these like flesh-eating plants that they have to trim the buds off of, and the teacher, who is just literally a discount diet Ida from the Owl House with her white hair and gold eyes, by the way, she picks up a rat, places it into the bud of the plant, and the rat fucking gets its flesh, muscles, and bones melted.
Oh yeah, but then like the student had like their face inside one of the plants and didn't melt at all for some reason.
No, it just looked like she got like a bunch of hives on her face. But like what stood out to me about the rat getting eaten is like, imagine if you were like fucking either a 7-year-old watching cartoons, or like you were like 10, 15 years in the future, you're a parent putting on a show for your kid to watch, and then that scene shows up when it's been mostly happy, fun kid times up until that point. Like, how fucking jarring, how fucking like scarring would that be for a kid?
I mean, to be completely fair, Gravity Falls had that one scene where the animal heads on the walls start bleeding out of their eyes and coming to life. So, you know, it's not unheard of for cartoons.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not unheard of. It's just, like, even Gravity Falls never got as graphic as that. Like, bleeding from the eyes is is definitely the most horrific imagery that Gravity Falls offered to its audience. But they did not have a living being getting its flesh, muscles, and bones melted. Like, presumably that creature, that rat, was still alive while its flesh and muscles were being devoured by the goo inside that plant.
God, that must have been painful.
And like I don't remember exactly. I feel like the rat was kind of like screaming or like doing some kind of screech of pain, and then like it stopped when it was just nothing but a skeleton, and then the skeleton melted as well. And like even going to like things like the sea serpent getting its fucking stomach torn open and there's blood everywhere, and then they have to fucking shove a sword through its skull. We don't see the sword go into the dragon's head, so like it's not like a intent. We don't see guts. We never see that's the worst gore we see. We only see blood. We never see like organs or shit like that.
You know,
but it's still kind of weird.
Yeah. I think what the weird thing about this tonally, I guess, and I guess less tonally and more in terms of like who's it for, because like it's too graphic for very young children, but it still feels like a kid's show. It is very much for children, but it's not.
It also feels doubly like a kid show when we get to the two, let's call them the legendary scenes from High Guardian Spice.
Oh god,
which I think you know what I'm talking about. We've been I'll commend us for getting this far, only talking about like the abject qualities of the production of the show and not getting too much into the quote political atmosphere surrounding it. But it's time. We're going in Monday Night Raw.
Oh god,
it's time to talk about Professor Calloway. which I only remember his name because he's the most prominent of the teacher characters, and
Actually,
I fucking wonder
I need to
why.
smugly correct you. It's Professor Caraway. Get it right.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's not date naming. I just got the name wrong. So you'll have to forgive me. I was gonna say they, but no, I guess he is the correct term for this. So Professor Caraway. Wait, I'm sorry. Was it R or L?
R.
Okay, Caraway. So Professor Caraway is the most prominent teacher character in the show. For one of the reasons now in retrospect, with having watched the whole series, I I can't help but wonder if there was some kind of favoritism as to why, but we'll disregard that for a moment because he is the direct cause of two of the most infamous scenes in the show, and they both have to do with his gender and transgenderism itself. So Caraway is a trans man, I'm pretty sure is the term. I
Yes.
sometimes get confused whether I like to say trans man or trans woman, depending on the person and the transitioning. Used to be a woman, is now a man. What's lame about it though? Not to say I gotta qualify it once again, because this is once again a minefield. Not to say transgenderism is lame. It is not lame. What is lame about Caraway is the way they describe transitioning within the show. So the first scene is with him talking to Rosemary about how he and Rosemary's mom Lavender were childhood friends and adventuring buddies, and he's showing her all of their pictures together, and he looks like a woman. This is back when Caraway was a woman, and Rosemary was confused by this. And then we get the most clumsy, ham-fisted, almost like I wouldn't even say it's Sesame Street tier, because Sesame Street knows subtlety. Because I've seen clips of Sesame Street with that tackle dark and heavy themes, like a death of a family member.
Oh, God.
With more like. Yeah, have you fucking seen that one clip of Sesame Street where Elmo's dad is talking with Elmo about Elmo's uncle, his the dad's brother, about like how like, oh, Elmo, you know Uncle Bill or whatever his name was, he passed away, right? And it's such like a fucking heavy scene, and like at no point does it feel like it's talking down to children. It's like tackling death in a very like realistic, appropriate way for a kid to maybe not 100% like come to terms with, because most kids today don't understand like the concept of death or like how persistent death is, but it's like enough to where it like at the very least opens the door to like it introduces them in a way that's not going to haunt their dreams. It's not scary. It's just reality. It doesn't talk down to them, and it's a good scene. And it's relatively recent too. Sesame Street, I've heard, is kind of really good still, which is nice to hear. It's as good as it was when I was a kid. But back on track. It is not what we get in High Guardian Spice is not a Sesame Street tier breakdown of what transgenderism is. It is almost like an Oxford Dictionary definition reading, and it's so lame for two reasons. One, because it's once again treating the audience like a fucking idiot, because they're explaining it in like the most basic, they explain it in a way like you've never heard of transgenderism, like if you're a kid and you don't know what that concept is, and it's really stupid because you could do it with so much more tact and grace and like make it feel like more natural, as opposed to this like this is like a separate aspect of a human's life that could be dealt with or talked about, but they do it so matter-of-factly that it seems a little lifeless. And the second thing that's lame about it is the way they describe it in universe is so needlessly lame, because there's literally a class of magic within the world of High Guardian Spice called transition magic, And it does change your gender, but not only is it not instantaneous, which it fucking should be, it's fucking magic. There should just be a spell that changes your gender for, just instantaneously. I can't imagine why it would. Well, I can't imagine within universe. I can give the real world explanation is because they wanted to do a clumsy allegory to transitional therapy and the hormones and whatnot. And they even go as far to mention like Caraway has to take a potion every month to maintain the spell, which is like, so you didn't need that. You could just have Caraway cast a spell at one point, like go through a magic. It doesn't have to be like as something as casual as like a fireball spell. It could be like a more serious meta physical altering spell that like takes like a big decision in your life to make, and it can be like, it doesn't have to be permanent. Like it can be like a thing you can undo like if you want to, but like having it be such a direct allegory to hormones is so fucking lame. This is a world of magic. Why are you trying to one for one shit with reality when you can, the point of a fantasy is to fantasize?
You know, the one-to-one allegory didn't annoy me quite so much, although I do think that an idea that I literally just came up with as you were talking about it, like, what if the magic was like, you had to set up like, it was basically the super long chance that in the future, if like, I presume Snapdragon is going to transition, like maybe currently he is going, like, what if there was this emotional scene where he starts saying the entire spell and it's like super long and complicated, but at the end you're just a woman suddenly. It's like, I think that would be cooler. Not sure what you think about that, but yeah.
It's definitely better than what we are given, because I know the reason why they wanted to make it a one-for-one allegory is because they wanted their transgender audience or their transgender members of their audience to like feel seen, feel represented. And it's just so clumsy, though. Like, I cannot speak for any transgenders. We are both straight white men. So we like take that for for the warning for this conversation is going in. But if I were a transgender, if I were a trans woman, I would feel like, man, you could have handled, like, even now I would feel the same way regardless. You could have handled this in so many better ways, and I have seen it handled in better ways. There are cartoons. There was a Twitter clip floating around. It didn't get a lot of traction. I just happened to see it on my timeline. I forget what the name of the show was. It's an old like 2000s Disney cartoon, which I can't remember the name of it, but it was about aliens in space. And there's this character, I'm sure the comments will remind me, assuming we actually get comments. There's this character who, at a certain age in this specific alien race's life, they get to choose whether they will be a boy or a girl. Like they are, I believe they're either, I didn't watch the show, I didn't see the whole episode, so I forget if he has a male voice, in the show, so I can't say whether or not he was a boy the whole time. I was just like choosing whether to stay a boy or will become a girl permanently, or was genderless before and then just chooses to become one or the other when they come of age. And in that episode of that show, his male friends were pressuring him to choose being a boy and like showing him all the reasons why. Like it was a kid's cartoon in the 2000s. It wasn't as I would say progressive as it would have been today. I don't think it would have been exactly like his male friends are trying to get him to be a male and his female friends are trying to get him to be female. I don't think it's going to be that black and white if it came out today, but it was a different time in the 2000s. So to sum up, they are trying to pressure him and he was like, you only want me. He gets mad at both of his sides of his friends because he's like, you only want me to be for your sake, but like, what about what I want? Like, it should be my decision. Why are you making it feel like it's your decision? And it's to sum up, it is a conversation that does not talk down to its audience because it is a 2000 Disney show. It is primarily kids. It tackles it. They don't directly call it transgenderism, but it is definitely an allegory. Like, if you are an adult watching, you will pick up on what the allegory is. It's not one-to-one because this is an alien species that gets to literally fucking choose. And it is permanent, but you know what? It's fiction. It's a fucking... They're aliens. That's more unrealistic than the fact that there are transgenders in the show. So we've already established that this is fantasy. You can do whatever you want, as long as there's a consistent logic to it. So now here we are, back to High Guardian Spice. They've presented us with two... I can't find an in-universe fault as to why their logic is set to why it is, but it's just so needlessly lame when I think back to what it's supposed to parallel in real life, and how needlessly clunky and lame that it is when it could have been so much cooler.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just that it is so textbook. I think they could have even had like just a normal conversation about it, but in a way that wasn't just the textbook definition of it. You know, make it an almost like intelligent sounding conversation that would have made it feel more natural. You know, I don't think it necessarily has to be, you know, the most deep thing ever, but it can just not be so direct, I think. And also,
yeah, like literally,
I think the other thing...
I'll let you get to your point, but I just want to say one more thing. Literally, Rosemary says to Caraway, who says just like shotgun statement, "I'm transgender." Rosemary straight up says, "I don't know that word," as if to like clue you in on, hey, audience, you are Rosemary right now. We are assuming that you also do not know what a transgender is, even though the show is supposed to be for adults. But this feels like a kid's conversation.
That is so, exactly
once
the point
again,
I was gonna
horribly
make.
inconsistent tone.
Because it's...
I'm sorry to have stolen your thunder once again.
Nah, it's fine. It's another thing where like the show doesn't really know whether or not it's for adults or children. It has the age warning, it has the blood, slay a dragon, but it also is willing to give you the dictionary definition of something that if you're above the age of 12 at this point, you've almost certainly heard of it and know what it is.
Yeah, and then the second scene, because they couldn't just leave it well enough alone with one scene, they had to have two unpopular, let's call them transgender scenes. The second one is with our boy Snapdragon, who I do kind of like. He is not my favorite character in the show, but he is not bad. I am a little... I don't want to say upset because I know the ire that statement will draw, but I am a little upset that his entire character... his stake in the narrative is that he feels like a gender identity crisis. Like, he is a boy, but he doesn't want to have like the boxy shoulders, the pointy chin. He is not a masculine strong boy. He kind of despises violence, and which, as a side note, why is he a guardian? Why is he an adventurer if he does not want to do things violently? Not to say all the adventurers, all the guardians in this show have to solve their problems violently, but more often than not, that is how they do shit. So, you know, that. And also, that Snapdragon's entire point in the show, like his role, is to be the surrogate gender questioning character. And I'm not saying that this has to play into the narrative of the show, but I can't help but fear that if there is a season 2, and if they do pull the trigger and decide to make Snapdragon transition into a woman, then that will be Snapdragon's contribution to the show. Like, he has served his purpose, and he has no more stake in the narrative. And I would be upset if that happened, because he is kind of a decent character that I want to see a little bit more of.
Yeah, Snapdragon's a fine character. He's better than, like, Rosemary and Sage for sure, at least in my opinion. Uh, and yeah, I'd also hate for that to just be his role in the show. Uh, yeah, that's about all I have to say for now.
I'll go a little out of order. We'll jump ahead to Snapdragon's backstory since he's already the topic of discussion right now. So he is one of the few characters in the show that actually gets a backstory. It's not much, but it does clue us into more of his character. It doesn't give us his goal, but just like who he is as a person, which is also serviceable. When he was a kid, he was much like he is now. He is a runty, kind of a twink boy. He's not very strong. He grew up with I forget if they said if he had more than one older brother, but he definitely had at least one, and he would bully him and like pick on him physically, have fights with him, steal his little pet rabbit thing, and then one day like his brother was punching him in the face and taking away his rabbit, and then their dad shows up, and he's like, "Boy, what are you doing?" And Snapdragon, like, the older brother took my rabbit away, he hit me. And he's like, "Oh, he did he?" And he is definitely shown to be he's not reprimanding Snapdragon, but he is showing a little fatherly tough love. That's how I interpret it. And he grabs the bunny, and he's holding it like a little, not like too high above his head, he's just holding it like at his height, and is like, "Son, I have something you want, try to take it from me." And then Snapdragon musters up all of the Sigma male courage in his body and fucking body checks his dad, drives the wind out of him, and gets his bunny back. And his dad congratulates him, gives him positive reinforcement, like, "You see that, son? When you put your mind to something, when you put your body towards it, and you'll get what you want." So, in my head, when I saw that, one of two things were going off. One is that this is how, like, we're showing that Snapdragon does not like violence, but if pushed, he will resort to it, like we also see where he fucking goes full screeching autist and beats the shit out of the mean purple guy. So we have that, but then the other thing that's going off in my mind is I can just hear the phrase toxic masculinity being swung around this scene. And I have to, once again, picking my words very carefully here. I can't just nonstop stream of consciousness lest I be lambasted. The way that I viewed it, like, I picked up on that was what they were going for, but at no point was Snapdragon's dad like belittling his son. He never called him a pussy. He never be like, "Oh, you gotta nut up and fight your battles like a man, or else you're like a little sissy boy." All he did was like, "All right, I have your rabbit. Like take it from me." And then he does. He gets body checked and he gives it back. And he's like, "You did good, kid. You did good." He was like really proud of him. And the way that I interpreted it was that I did not think this was him imparting a bad lesson to his kid, because to an extent, this is a controversial statement, but to an extent, like, regardless of whether you are male or female or whatever, I do think that it's less of an issue of gender, more of an issue of like backbone. Because Snapdragon is kind of he kind of folds when the going gets tough. If he doesn't go full screeching autist and like beats the shit out of someone when he pushed too far, he will fold and just be like flustered, like we saw him when he was a kid.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he has no backbone whatsoever. I didn't think the lesson itself was bad. It's a good lesson that is being instilled into Snapdragon. I think the main problem, at least coming from purely my perspective and sort of disregarding the show's perspective, the main problem with his father is just that he didn't reprimand his brother. I think that his brother, but I also don't think the core of the message was bad. But also that I think because...
Yeah, I feel like he was trying to... I'm sorry, I feel like he was trying to teach a Snapdragon to be like, "All right, if your brother's ever doing that again, just do what you did to me on him, and he'll stop bothering you. Like, I think he wanted, like, to teach him to fight his own battles, which is a good lesson for people to have, but I just worry that this will be, once again, like, here we have another straight male character imparting some morally questionable advice. Like, and it couldn't be his mother. It just couldn't be his mother that delivered this line. I guarantee you that thought never crossed the writer room's head.
I still think it's not great parenting to not reprimand his brother, but yeah, once again, core of the message
I
is
agree.
good. And although the fact that he wasn't reprimanded, the implication then is that it's sort of a toughest wins sort of household where, you know, people aren't reprimanded for sort of just bullying each other and can basically do whatever they want, and it's, you know, strongest gets to have the best life, sort of that type of system, which not a great household, but you know. So
That's part of what I like about his character is that his like theme essentially is striking out and building your own legacy, as seen where he's in weapons class and he is like using his father's axe. This was his weapon that he gave to him, and he's like having trouble wielding it because he's not a very strong boy. He's got fucking noodle arms. And then at one point, so the combat instructor shows up. He's like, "Look, kid, I get that this is your father's axe, but you got like you. I get that you're trying to maintain your family legacy, but there comes a point where you got to strike out and you got to make your legacy, because it can't always be about where you came from. It's about where you're going." So he hands him a rapier, and he's way better with the rapier, and becomes more proficient with it throughout the show. And like it complements his lanky frame. He's not doing big broad swings. He's going on precision accuracy strikes. And I thought that was it's basic, but it's serviceable. It's what I would expect from the bare minimum quality of a show trying to tell its story and trying to, like, without outright saying, look, you're not built for this axe. This rapier suits you best. They don't say that. They show more than they tell, which is kind of rare for this show, but when it works, it works.
that scene definitely does work, yeah. We're sort of off track.
Yeah, I'll swing it back around to the second transgender scene. So there's a fall festival where Snapdragon dressed up as a mermaid to compliment his friend, we will not name yet because that comes in another time, their pirate costume. And he gets hit on by the purple mean boy in the tux because Snap looked like a girl from behind. And then he gets very, whoa, I'm not gay, bro. I'm not fucking gay, bro. What are you queer? What are you, the F slur? And that upsets Snapdragon immensely because it's the gender identity rearing its head again. And then this comes to a head in a later episode where the purple kid is bullying Snapdragon again, being like, "Oh, I bet you like it, you gay lord." And then this causes Snapdragon to fucking snap, bro, and then he fucking beats the shit out of him. Just apparently, I was like rooting for him the whole time, but I kind of like stopped rooting for him after Caraway pulls up on the boat next to him, and he's like, "I can tell that you broke your wrist. So you're being pulled from the mission." Kid's like, "You broke your wrist by punching him in the face?" Like, I get that they're trying to drive home that he's a non-violent boy and kind of a weak sauce little pansy kid, but how are you gonna empower? Well, I shouldn't say empower because it is a moment of a weakness to lose control, just beat the shit out of the kid, even though he had it coming. How's like you gonna like tear down your character while trying to like somewhat build him up by standing up for himself and beating the shit out of the kid by breaking his wrist mid beat down? That's just kind of lame. Here, I feel like I've been kind of doing a lot of the scene breakdown. I'll let you take the other transgender scene.
All right. So then after, he breaks his wrist, and we have the talk with Professor Caraway and Snapdragon's like, he said, I'm so girly, I'm a woman, and I was like, and you know, I feel like a woman. I don't like my boxy shoulders and whatnot. You know, I want to paint my nails and stuff. And Professor Caraway's like, hey, you heard of transition magic? And that's when the scene cuts.
It's it almost sounds like he's offering him a fucking drug. Like, hey, like come here.
Come here, kid.
You didn't hear this from me. But have you heard this thing called transition magic?
You can get it from my van anytime.
Meet me outside the back alley of the Walgreens. And it's so, once again, very clumsy. And I've seen people online call this straight up fucking transgender grooming, which, to half of their credit, if all you saw was just up to that scene, and if in the episode, if that like is where their story ended within that context, and there wasn't the scene afterwards, then it would be straight up grooming. But there is the scene afterwards where Caraway teaches Snapdragon about transition magic, and he's kind of into it, but he's not 100% on pulling the trigger just yet, but he's relieved to know that there is another way. And then Caraway tells him, like, just because that transition magic exists doesn't necessarily mean it's the choice for you. Like, I felt that it was the choice for me, but I am not a one represents all case. This is like a choice that you have to make on your own. And I hope that if the show were to go on, which it likely won't, I hope that the direction that they choose to go in is that they don't pull the trigger 100% on the transition magic, but just allows Snapdragon to get more in touch with his feminine side, because I feel like that is a good message to send, like, alongside, like, not to say that you can't have more than one transgender character in your show, but like, if you're trying to be this this diverse LGBT pro plus background kind of show, we've already got like the full transgender transition conversation topic done and represented with Caraway. So you can have Snapdragon be this more, well, he doesn't want to transition completely, but still wants to like be more in touch with feminine side. Like he should be able to paint his nails without like criticism or questioning his masculinity. And I feel like that is a good message to send.
Yeah, I think that'd certainly be a more interesting place to take the character, though I don't think it would go that way if it did continue. But hey, it would be more interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I feel like they would just make him Caraway but younger, which is lame narratively, but I can't say that because that would be like I'm saying a character becoming trans within the narrative would be bad, so that would just get me crucified. So this is how High Guardian Spice wins.
I don't think either, I mean, they're definitely clumsy. I don't think either of the transition scenes are as awful as I think a lot of people are making it out to be, because even though it is a bit overly basic and expository, there still is, very in-universe grounded reasons as to why these things are being brought up. And I did appreciate that. They at least went to that extent, even if the actual dialogue is basic. So I can't say they're horrible. They just could have been better, could have been refined a lot more and made to not feel like they're talking down to you. And again, with the sort of age crisis where it's like, who's this for? I think that, if it had chosen specifically to be a kids show, I think people would have less complaints. But since it is a sort of, well, halfway adult, halfway kids, it's like, well, you're pulling in the adults who are going to feel talked down to.
I feel like the main conflict that people are taking issue with is that this show was like built on the back of, this is a diverse group of white women writers with different backgrounds and pro LGBT. Like they said, I believe 50% of the cast were like LGBT community members. So I feel like, at least from my perspective, I would assume that if I had heard that, then they would handle the topics with a little more tact and a little more what's the word I'm looking for?
A little less heavy-handed.
They would yeah, that's a good one. Less heavy-handed. And the fact that that is not what we got the opposite coming from someone. It almost sounds like this is probably the most of all the offensive shit I could say. I think this might actually be the most offensive. It sounds like it's like transgenderism being described by someone who like just did the Wikipedia search of transgenderism online and then wrote that into the script.
It does kind of feel that way.
Whereas like other shows like that Disney show I mentioned earlier, and a more recent example that I just remembered, that Netflix Rocko's Modern Life special, where one of the previous male characters just came out as a trans woman at one point, and it is handled with a little pomp and circumstance because it's the but it's partly because it's the first time we've seen that specific character in the special, and they don't dwell on it is the thing though. They just like say, hey, I'm a woman now, and all of his friends are like, cool, all right, now back to the plot. And like some people kind of get upset at like that it's just treated as like, hey, this is a thing now, okay, cool, which I can a little bit understand why they'd be a little upset. They'd probably want like the transgender character to have, well, like, or a character that transitioned between like points of time within the series to have a little more attention, a little more celebration to that scene. But if, at least in my perspective, I would much rather take just the casual acceptance and acknowledgement of it than just like what we have in High Guardian Spice, where it's just drawn out, basic, from the textbook, bland, heavy-handed.
Yeah, I don't think we have too many disagreements here.
All right, well, I feel like we've gone on a little too long to talk about every episode individually, so I think we'll just touch on the broader narrative as a whole. So, how do you feel about the story of High Guardian Spice?
It feels a lot more like a sort of slice of life show than it does a more plot driven show. As for the more plot heavy elements, they're very undercooked and not at all fascinating, mostly because the world is just sort of half baked. And so it's like, you know, specifically with like the rot, right? Like, I mean, I guess it does get a little interesting towards the end, and it is built up somewhat interestingly, but at the same time, it's like, do I really care about the world or anything that's happening? And, you know, too many world building details have just been left, you know, sort of under explained to where it's like, I don't care.
I touched on this earlier, but definitely one of this show's biggest crimes that is a big guilty party of telling and not showing. Like, for example, the rot, as you said, we are told that it is fucking up the fairy woods, but I don't think we're ever directly shown how like it's fucking up the fairy woods and how this is impacting the residents of the woods. Like, we're just told that shit's getting fucky, and that's it.
There are like I think we see the rot twice in the show, which is once in that one little tree on the cliff, and the other is when the dragon thing, I forget what it's called, but it has like a bit of rot like tied to its leg or something like that, and so that makes him evil.
Yeah, so we know what it's capable of, but we don't know like how I wouldn't say maybe effective, because we see how it does affect the dragon. It's like we don't see the scale of how bad it could be. Like if we were like given a scene where the rot is like spreading through the fairy woods, and like it could be like destroying the homes of the elves and the woodland creatures. You could even show them, if you want to get a little more adult and make the tone a little more consistent and have like more adult images thrown in, you can have the rot shown to be like touching one person, like one elf, and then they like succumb to like a disease or just outright kills them. Like, you show us how dangerous this rot really is and why it needs to be dealt with immediately.
There's definitely an issue of not enough information to really assess the threat. But I do at least appreciate that it's at least a pretty subtle sort of allegory for climate change. At least I think. Because the characters they specify it is destroying the environment and wildlife. And that's like the one thing that the show is really fixating on. You know, like, oh, these beautiful creatures are dying because of the rot, or like getting all messed up. So that is one case of the show being pretty subtle with its themes, which I like. I like that.
I didn't even pick up that it was supposed to be climate change. I thought it was just I thought it was just like the darkness, or like they're just an evil force that kills whatever it touches.
I am
So I guess
90%
they get a
sure.
point there.
I'm 90% sure it's climate change.
Well, the show is very not subtle most of the time, so you can forgive me as to why that one might have flown over my head.
I can.
There was one more moment of telling and not showing that I was really upset by, is that we are constantly told that Sage's family is of the old magic variety, and they are so against new magic that if Sage's mom found out that Sage got a Terrasphere, which is essentially a new magic wand, she would fucking flip shit and like go all deep South American parent on her ass. But you brought new magic into this household. But we are never shown a flashback. I don't think we ever even see Sage's parents at any point.
The biggest thing that bothered me in terms of that specific plot point is why. Why do they care so much about, you know, using old magic? Is it just tradition, or is there something, you know, like, is there something to
I can
old magic?
only assume it's tradition,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, we can only glean as much because there's no in-universe reason, you know, justified by the narrative as to the difference between old magic and new magic. Aside from that, old magic is less efficient.
Well, that's the only reason that they give. Like, we see in that botany class scene where Sage is the last one to leave to finish her assignment because she's trying to do it with old magic to snip the plants, but it's ineffective, whereas everyone else who practices new magic do it like instantly.
And in the end, she finishes because someone else did new magic for her anyway. There is one other reason that I think, like, one other possibility that is underexplored but could explain her parents' hatred, which is that during the little arc with the cat and the festival turning to stone, there's this one line about how, oh, should people have this much power to like do stuff with new magic? And it's like, you know, maybe her parents see it as dangerous, but it's not really explored. It's still like, well, why should I care about new magic and old magic? You know, that you've given me not enough information to really be intrigued. You've only told me that it simply exists, and it's like, okay, what's the difference? Why do I care? None of this matters.
I completely forgot that plot point was even brought up in that episode until you reminded me. And now that you've explained it like that, I do remember being like, that is a pretty intelligent, worthwhile conversation to have about new magic. Like, is it having this kind of power so easily and readily accessible a responsible thing to do? It's too bad they literally never touch on it again.
What bothers me most about
and like
that
new
line,
magic, I think, is shown as mostly in a positive light, except for that moment.
What bothers me the most is that, like, all right, we're merely told that new magic can do anything, right? But we don't see a character who uses, like, let's say, exclusively new magic and starts messing shit up. You never see anyone, like, show the true destructive capability of new magic. So it's like, when a character says, well, should we have this much power? It's like, well, I don't know, should you? I'm not sure how powerful it is. I'm not sure the limits here. I've only been told, hey, it can do anything. Well, can it literally do anything? I don't think it can, you know, or else people would be wishing themselves to be God and then destroy the world. So, like, it clearly can't literally do anything. So what can it do? Where's the limit? Is it too dangerous or is it not? I can't know.
going back to that scene where they turn everyone to stone on accident, the bad guy, there's a cat girl named Olive. She is one of the better characters in the show. She's trying to kill our main four, but she's kind of going back and forth. Like, she doesn't necessarily want to kill them, but she is working for the bad guys. So she's like, okay, I'll turn them to stone and then bring them to the, what was it, the Triumvirate? The
Yeah,
name of
I
the bad
think it
guys?
is.
Yeah, I'll bring them to to the Triumvirate, and then I'll let them take care of them for me, so my hands are stay clean. Which is not a very sound line of logic because they'll probably just kill them anyway, and you are just essentially bringing them to their deaths. But whatever, help you sleep at night, babe. So she's casting this powerful spell. I do like, now that I think about it, I am going to give the show little props on this. I do like the visual style of new magic kind of having the patterns of circuit boards and having like kind of represented of almost like technology has been infused within the magic itself. That is definitely not like the actual case. It's not like in Little Witch Academia, where there is a character who, one of the big plot points of the show in that universe is that magic is on its way out and technology is replacing it. And there's this character that mixes magic with technology, and it's a really cool concept. And I do like in High Guardian Spice how all of the new magic, or at least some of it, like the stone spell, I remember having like a circuit board kind of pattern, and it's like the outlines are slowly being filled with like magic light to show it being powered up. I do like that. That is a nice visual indicator that separates new magic from old magic, which is usually made by writing ancient magic runes in the air or some shit. And going back to the responsibility of the new magic, that spell was only meant to transform the four girls into stone, and it's only partly because Sage casted that shielding spell around them that the spell bounced off and hit the entire town, turning everyone else into stone. So, the show has kind of given a muddled case as to the responsibility of the destructive power of new magic, because that's like it's almost kind of like blaming like saying this might be a little politically charged, but it's like assault rifles like in today's climate are they have heat. Like, should we be able to have access to assault rifles? But like this specific circumstance is kind of like comparing, like, say you were a professionally trained licensed assault rifle owner, and you're like firing at a target, and because you got tackled by someone like mid-firing, like you accidentally fire at a person because something outside interference has caused your aim to miss. So like, is the fault on the assault rifle, or is the fault on or the accessibility of assault rifles, or is the fault on the person who tackled you, causing your shot to miss? That's the vibe I got from it, at least.
I didn't really think of that too much. But back on sort of the topic of like new magic and old magic and the circuit board pattern, which I actually also didn't notice until you pointed it out, which now that I think back on it, yeah, that's a good visual indicator. While I was watching the show, I couldn't help but think that old magic was basically just an allegory for old technology, and like magic is a sort of an allegory for new technology, and Sage's parents are like people who like reject the internet or whatever, or something like that. At least that's what I thought it was getting at, or maybe the plot just isn't that deep. That also could be very possible considering the writing team behind this.
I kind of considered that possibility as well, but I like instantly dropped that possibility from my mind because I was like, but like it's such a flimsy allegory to make, because there is old technology that we are objectively better off without, like even as something like the landline phone in your house. Would you rather use a fucking rotary phone to individually dial, like spin around to get to the number each time, or can you just press some numbers on a keypad and dial a phone? And you don't have to be like tethered to a cord. You can take the phone away from this little charging dock and walk around your house so long as you have signal. Like, that's just an objectively better improvement to what is essentially the same kind of technology. So like the comparison between old magic and new magic, it's like it. At least from my outside perspective, it's like, okay, literally, why should I be using old magic if I were in this universe when new magic is like 98% of the time shown to be objectively better?
And I think that's what you're supposed to think. And I think that Sage's parents, at least the show makes them out to be sort of kooky and like, you should disregard what your parents say and break tradition and stuff like that. I think that's what the show is sort of getting at, which is why I thought, maybe this is the allegory they're going for, kind of, along with just general themes of disregard tradition, embrace progress. I think that's another thing that the show is sort of getting at as well.
You gotta gaslight, gatekeeping girl boss the new magic away from the old magic.
Exactly.
And while we're on the subject of girl bosses, we have been very down on this show, but I hope that you will agree with me on this one, that there is one beacon of light within the darkness that is cutting through and shining the fucking bat signal into the night sky of Gotham, where despair and gloom reign over all. Fear not, true believers. There is one single unqualified good thing about this show. Everyone, get down on your knees and clasp your hands together in rejoice of the goddess Amaryllis.
Amen. Amaryllis is easily the best character in this show. Easily the best thing about it. I love her so much. I love her instantly. She is the best.
I cannot believe that a character like Amaryllis can come from the same group of writers as all of these other characters. Not to say that she isn't the only good character, but like even with other characters that I enjoy, like Time or Olive, I do have to qualify some of my liking of them because they either occasionally will have something happen to them in the narrative that will make me be like, ugh, or just something about them in general that I can't wipe away or like think about without going like, I wish this was different about them. Not so with Amaryllis. Literally everything about her is perfect. From her introduction to her final line in the show, she never has a moment where I'm like, man, fuck this bitch. I'm always like, yes, queen, slay. You are the girl boss. You will gaslight, you will gatekeep, and you will get the praise that you so desperately deserve.
I liked Amaryllis from her introduction, and like when she's near the beginning saying like, at ease, pores, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that confidence.
Yeah, I remember I and our buddy of mine, we're all watching the first 3 episodes together, and she shows up in the third. It was either the second or the third episode.
The second.
I think it was the third. Oh, second. Okay, my bad. And then like Sage and Time, they're not on good terms at this point in the narrative, and they're just talking. And then literally Amaryllis, there's no pomp and circumstance. She just walks into frame as if like she is taking over, pushes them aside, and her exact line is,
"Don't worry, I'm here. At ease, pores."
And it is glorious. I fucking burst out laughing.
That is probably my favorite line in the entire show. And I really liked Amaryllis from the beginning, but what sold her to me as like easily the greatest thing in this entire show by like an entire head, neck, shoulders, torso, all the way down to like her ankles. She is that far ahead of everything else in the show.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
The thing that sold me on her that hard was when she, I think it's episode either 6 or 7, the one with the douchey blonde guy, where she's waving this battle axe around, like just going down on these like dummies, like these training dummies. She has like the best expression on her face that just made me burst out laughing when I see it.
Like there is never a dull moment when Amaryllis is in frame. It is impossible for, especially when she's the focus of the scene, it is impossible for me to divert my attention away. All of my senses are hyper focused, hyper aware of everything that she is doing, because everything that she does is either funny or it's endearing. And I feel like the writers might have fucked up inadvertently because Amaryllis is supposed to be the mean girl bully character that I'm supposed to hate. But why is she... So here's the problem, though. Why is she my favorite character?
I don't think you're necessarily supposed to hate her. I think you're definitely supposed to root against her, because obviously she has bad intentions in mind most of the time. But I think that you are supposed to begrudgingly enjoy her presence on screen and think, yeah, this girl is worthy of rooting against. She is a fun character, and I enjoy her being the villain. Or something along those lines.
If that was the true intention, if that was the final goal, then the writers have fucked up horrendously, because I want Amaryllis deserves the fucking world. I want her to fucking take that axe and cut through that hedge maze in that one episode, even though she keeps getting fucking trapped, even though it keeps magically repairing itself and causing her to go every which ways. I want her to axe right through that entire hedge maze, because she has the fucking drive, she has the confidence, she is like almost never shaken in the show, which is not to be like she's some kind of Mary Sue's like, oh, I don't fucking feel fear. What's great about her is that while she is primarily the bully mean girl, she does have those moments where she's able to bring her back down to earth, relate to her best buddy Snapdragon, who I am a little happy that they clear up immediately, like, oh no, Snapdragon's not my best friend. There's a moment in the conversation that they have in the same one where Snapdragon asks Sage if she has a crush on Rosemary, where she in turn responds, do you have a crush on Amaryllis? And like, oh god, like they're very quick to sink that ship. Like, no, fuck no. I feel it was like more like father-daughter relationship, to which Sage responds, who's who in that scenario? And it's like, yeah, because Amaryllis girl bosses the fuck out of Snapdragon. And as funny as that would be to just have him be like the Smithers to her Mr. Burns, they do make it a plot point in the show where like Snapdragon is getting upset about her constantly pushing him around, and that causes discourse between their team and causes them to fuck up in their chemistry. And that really becomes a compelling point, because I already am like more into Snapdragon than I am not into him, and I would literally die for Amaryllis. So I naturally want to see this conflict get resolved in the best way possible.
I haven't looked at too much of I've looked at the discourse a little bit, but I haven't looked at the fandom. So tell me, is Amaryllis the fan favorite character?
There seem to be 3 fan favorite characters in the show. Amaryllis is one of them. Slime Boy, for some reason, I will equate that one to they see their autistic, introverted, shy selves in him. And then, what the fuck was the other twink kid's name who had the goat frog?
I had her name written down somewhere.
Was it a woman? I thought it was a dude.
I thought it was a woman.
I mean, he is very, very much a twink, so I wouldn't be surprised. Knowing this show, I wouldn't be surprised if either he was a girl the whole time, or he will be the new transgender character.
All right. I know, I guess their name, it starts with an A.
Does it? No, wait. Oh, fuck. Parnell, I think his name is.
There we go, yeah. Okay, so it wasn't an A. Never mind.
Yeah, people like him the most because he seems to be the quirky comic relief character. I do like his best line is a moment with Amaryllis where they're chasing down memories that escaped from Amaryllis's head, and he happens to see one embarrassing one, and then Amaryllis is like, if you fucking tell a single soul that you saw any of this, I will turn you into a lizard and keep you in my closet forever. And then he's like, bold of you to assume that's not one of my life goals.
That line was
like, right.
Awesome.
I'm like, you know what? Same, kid. Same. I would let Amaryllis turn me into a lizard and keep her in her closet in the dark for all eternity, because I know that it's Amaryllis's closet. So I would serve the goddess.
Yes.
Insert the Sigma advice.
Nope. I've narrowed it down in my head. This isn't checkers, this is chess. Be the queen, not the pawn.
You know, I've heard a lot of criticism about this show's dialogue, and admittedly, there is some of it that sort of falls flat to me. But for every bad line, there's an equally clever and genuinely funny line. So I'd say it balances out to being
I wouldn't
just
say
alright.
it's. I wouldn't say it's that like for like one step forward, one step back. I would say for every 3 or 4 bad lines, there's like one good line, and it usually comes from Amaryllis, which is why the 11th episode is the worst one. Was it the 11th episode where she gets written out of the story? Yeah. The 11th one, where they literally write out Amaryllis from the plot. And I was already like, oh, well, my investment in this episode is immediately tanked.
Oh yeah, the one where like she couldn't go on to the mission, right?
Yeah, and she does like show up more than once. She shows up once when the purple kid comes back after getting his ass kicked, and then at the end where she's consoling Snapdragon in what I might add is a fucking hilarious scene where, to no fault of Amaryllis, this is a bad scene, but it's not because Amaryllis is there. She is naturally carrying the show. It's the scene where like after Snapdragon gets home, and then he's almost like on the verge of tears, but he's not quite there yet. And then when Amaryllis walks into the room, it's like, hey, how's your day been? He like fucking breaks down in the most like horribly like crying.
I remember
acting
that.
I've heard. It's like he's fucking like bawling his eyes out, like, and I was like laughing so hard because I don't think any like tears came down from his eyes. I could be wrong about that, but I was too busy closing my eyes and clutching my sides in laughter of just like the horrible tonal whiplash, which was made doubly funnier by his immediate like snapping out of it when he looks at Amaryllis's nails and it's like, you have pretty nails, or like he says something like that. It relates to him wanting his nails painted, and the way he's just so in one snap to just stop crying. He goes from not crying to bawling his fucking eyes out to not crying again in the span of like 10 seconds, and that was fucking hilarious.
That was probably one of the worst instances of bad voice acting in the show, aside from everything Slime Boy ever says.
Slime Boy, his delivery is fine for what they're going for. I just feel like they fucked up in the character animating for him. It doesn't match.
I think the acting is still a bit off for Slime Boy, but that crying was horrendous.
So yeah, Amaryllis fucking carries the show. If there's a brave soul out there who's willing to go through every Amaryllis scene in the show and create a supercut of all of her scenes, that is the ideal way to consume High Guardian Spice. Everything else can be fucking chucked into the fire, just keep that. If this show was just Amaryllis should have been the fucking main character, honestly.
Dude.
Like, I would have taken a show about a fucking mean bully girl who becomes less of a mean bully girl as the show goes on, and her gender questioning best friend over these fucking 4 characters. In a heartbeat, I would have swapped them out.
If Amaryllis was the main character, then this would be like a 7 or an 8 out of 10 easily.
Let's go over all of Amaryllis' highlights real quick before we have to begrudgingly move on. We already talked about how literally all of her lines are good. Her voice acting is also as good as her lines. She is voiced by Katie McVeigh, which is, I will say, this is the one trapping of her character, which is not entirely her fault. I don't know if you picked up on this like I did. I went on IMDb later to confirm it. When I saw the title cards of every single episode, I did notice Katie McVeigh's name coming up a lot in the writing section, and she is responsible for writing I believe half of the episodes. I could not tell you which ones without looking it up, but she's definitely wrote on like around 6 of them. So I can only assume that if she worked on the script and the screenplay, then because she voiced her character, she voiced her own character rather, she made sure to, out of what is considered not good etiquette in the industry, gave herself all of the best lines, and then everyone else the breadcrumbs, the leftovers.
I didn't necessarily pick up on her voice actor also being a writer, but yeah, that makes sense and is probably responsible for some of the more awkward lines of dialogue, which contribute to the sort of overall feeling of being half-baked and jank.
But not Amaryllis's dialogue.
Oh,
Hers
certainly
are
not.
never half-baked. Hers are never jank. And they're all delivered well. Excuse me. I never saw a single Amaryllis line, or heard one rather. I was like, oh, that could have been done better. It was like perfect. It was, gold was dripping down her lips.
Even her like more emotional dialogue is very much like the best emotional dialogue in the show. Probably, I'd have to double check, but they were the ones that made me cringe the least. As in, not at all, because it's Amaryllis and she's awesome.
Her fucking line about, this isn't checkers, this is chess. Be the queen, not the pawn. Is like, it tells so much about her character without directly, like, having her, like, talk in the first person. And it's, like, such good writing. I don't know why they, like, if this were if High Guardian Spice were an RPG, Amaryllis would be a stat that they poured all of their fucking points into and neglected everything else. This is like if you're trying to min-max for one character. And Amaryllis is the 10 out of 10.
That intentionally botched chess
I
metaphor
could,
was like one of my favorite lines in the show. That was great.
If I could magically pluck Amaryllis out of this show and insert her into like fucking Amphibia or Owl House or something else, I'd do it without hesitation, in a fucking heartbeat. I am so sad. This is the only sad thing about High Guardian Spice, is that there's literally no fucking way it's getting a season 2. That means this Amaryllis content is the only content we're gonna get of her for the rest of time. And that makes me sad.
That is a tragedy, a Shakespearean tragedy, unlike anything the world has seen before.
Listen, Katie McVeigh, if by some chance you happen to be listening to this, don't quit your day job. You are a good voice actor. This, I see on IMDb, this is like your first major role. You knocked it out of the park. You are definitely deserving of greater things. You might want to leave the writing job in the wayside and go into the voice acting industry full time. Like this is your moment. Don't miss your chance to blow.
So, do you have anything else to say about Amaryllis? I think in general, she's just cool.
I do have a couple more notes that are just like I can breeze over real quick. But they're all I felt were necessary to write down just to display my love for her. I love that the literal moment she is handed the axe, she goes fucking ballistic with it and becomes a bloodthirsty killer.
That was incredible.
The fucking apparently maybe I'm reading too much into this line, but if I am, then why did they have it written like this? Amaryllis is apparently canonically into beta cuck females who pussy out at dangerous situations. When that blonde bitch who used to be a roommate left from that cave mission, and then she says something like, hey, just for the record, I find cowardice in others extremely attractive. And she says that without like a hint of irony, or maybe either she's saying it ironically, like, oh wow, that's attractive, or she's just outright stating like, oh yeah, if you are a quivering pussy, that turns me on. And like, either way, that's incredibly endearing for either A, she's just being her normal sarcastic self, or B, she's just casually throwing out one of her kinks. And like, that's some clean shit to do just in like normal conversation.
I hope so badly it's the second
one. Oh yeah, she was also, not only is she like, I do admit I get a little bit of ironic enjoyment out of Amaryllis, if only because like the Addie's pores line is like it's kind of a little like weird to just insert on its own, but like they built it up. I'm glad that they kept Amaryllis a baseline level of mean the whole time. Like if she did a whole 180 and became a nice girl, then it would retroactively make some of her meaner lines seem a little weird. But they kept her consistent. she is also this is the point where the support of her is no longer ironic, and this is when I 100% knew for a fact that she would be the best character and no one will even come close to toppling her. She is super supportive of Snapdragon's decision to embrace his feminine side. She's like, no, you look fucking incredible in that mermaid costume. I'm gonna help you paint your fucking nails, bitch.
It's like Amaryllis is just enough of an asshole, but also just enough of like a genuine caring friend. She's just such a perfect character.
The one time that I did feel like she was feeling a little out of character for her is when it was the whole conceit of the memory chasing episode where she's trying to get back at Snapdragon for spending more time with Sage than herself. So she was going to use a spell to make him and Sage have all their memories exposed to each other, all their embarrassing bad ones. That way they couldn't even look at each other anymore, and they'd have to be consoled by their actual best friends. And I felt like that was a little too mean to Snapdragon when the worst thing he did was just hang out with someone that's not like her. I suppose it's a little in character because she is very controlling, but I feel like it was the one time where they were trying to make her a mean bully girl and they went too far.
I did not really feel that it was too far, mostly because she's just kind of always been kind of an asshole. Like, her first line is literally Addie's.
Or maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's my fault, and I'm so in love with this character that any time the writers are actually setting out to make her the bully that she's supposed to be, I'm getting upset by it. Like, no, Amaryllis is the sweetest. She would never.
Oh yeah,
it's like finding out one of your. It's like finding out one of your most favorite beloved actors in history is part of like. It's not 1-to-1, but it's. It's like finding out one of your favorite actors was like secretly into raping people, and was like, no, but you were my favorite. Why did you have to do this?
That allegory went
like,
way off the rails way quickly.
Do I have any more notes about Amaryllis? Oh yeah, that one fucking moment where Rosemary and Sage are having like their first fight in the show during the festival, and then Amaryllis just happened to be passing by, and she like drags Snapdragon over. It's like, oh my god, Snap, look, they're about to start going at each other's throats. These people who are like normally so like arm in arm with each other. Imagine all of the insults they have been saving up for each other in their heads. I gotta fucking see
that
this
line
shit.
Was awesome.
Like the fact that she just fucking feeds off this negative energy. She like never inserts herself in the conversation. She just chooses to be an onlooker. She might as well have been pulling out the bag of popcorn and being like, yes, free entertainment.
Amaryllis is just such a perfect character for this show. I love her. Or maybe not for this show, but she probably single-handedly elevates it.
She is infinitely too good for this show.
She probably elevates it from like a
dead ass. She is the if Amaryllis was not in the show, my enjoyment of the show would be cut down by more than half.
Oh damn.
Her shoulders are aching by carrying the show so hard. She straight up almost kills someone while they're in that video game when they're oblivious to the petrification around them. She's like, hey, why don't we just start smashing the video game Frozen students to like get more points or some shit. And the Snapdragon's like, that's messed up. And she's like, yeah, I know. And then she pushes over one of the statues that she doesn't know is actually a petrified person. And you're like, if Snapdragon didn't save that person, Amaryllis would have almost straight up fucking murdered someone, and it's so hilariously dark and somewhat in line with her character that I was like, this is the greatest. I am consistently baffled that a character as perfect as Amaryllis could be in a show as bad as this. It defies logic. It defies causality.
I will say that this is perhaps one moment where like she could have been toned down, and not because it wasn't absolutely hilarious. All right, this isn't necessarily Amaryllis's fault, but rather that I feel like Snapdragon's character was altered to make that line work. This might have been one of the episodes where Amaryllis's voice actor sort of, wanted to say that thing so badly that she contorted the character of Snapdragon to fit that, to where it's like, I find it a little hard to believe that Snapdragon is so up in arms about killing someone in, a video game. It's a video game to him. So it's like, but also funny Amaryllis line. So, maybe it evens out in the end. I still think I would at least consider that a bit of a character inconsistency / plot hole / just kind of dumb.
I will come to the show's defense on that one. I didn't feel like it was too out of character. He is a non-violence liking person, and he has been shown to be mean to others, mainly Rosemary, but he's never shown to be like outright like disregarding of human life. And not to say Amaryllis disregards human life, but she's like, if like she would play the genocide route in Undertale first, and like she would take it as a fucking challenge.
Oh, she absolutely would.
Like she's the kind of person that thinks pacifist run is hard mode.
Maybe I am just reading into it a little bit too much, or maybe I just can't really put myself in Snapdragon's shoes because, like, it's a video game. I don't care. I don't know. It just felt a bit, would that really happen? But I don't know. I won't harp on it too much.
There's that moment where Amaryllis, almost, not almost, she does break one of the stone birds, and everyone's like, Amaryllis, what the fuck? And she's like, relax, it was decorative, it was already there, it was just a regular, like, stone statue of a bird. And then later, we see a blood splatter on the ground with a bunch of feathers, and then she's, like, poking at it, she's like, oops, when all the petrification wears off. And it's like, they didn't need to include that last bit. It could have just been a dark joke all in its own. It's just like, it's just a stone bird, relax. But the fact that they went the extra mile, it's like, nope, this blood is on Amaryllis's hands. And she probably feels bad about it, but like, she doesn't, it's not going to haunt her dreams like the sea serpent does to our main cast when they have to put that thing down. She's just like, well, it could have happened to anyone.
This is like a complete, like, this comment for me is like completely out of left field, but regarding the sea serpent, even though we talked about it way earlier, I felt like Sage almost underreacted. Like, her horror wasn't sold, like, at all, not just in the facial expressions, but that her line...
We did touch it. I was going to say, we did touch
it's like
on that
more
with the
like what she said was, oh my god, I didn't mean to kill it. It's like, I don't know,
there's not enough panic in her voice.
But that's like 10 years ago, so let's just leave it at that.
Amaryllis has the best outfit in the entire show, where during the memory episode, where she's just in that fit of she's got like the white shirt around her shoulder, like exposing the bare shoulders, and the straps underneath. I like that outfit just in general, and the fact that they put it on Amaryllis is that was just a bone they threw to me unknowingly. And that just made her, like, even better. Like, that was just a bonus.
I think it's official. Amaryllis is the goddess, the almighty, the creator of heaven and earth.
She is the Sigma female. Be the queen and not the pawn. She, at the final episode, she fucking girl bosses everyone to safety from the fire. She is the reason why all those students survived. She is the true unsung hero of the show. And why I so desperately wish that instead of having a main cast of 4, they fucking annex Amaryllis and Snapdragon and become a group of 6, because the best episodes of the show are, or at least the best moments, are when they're all working together, when all 6 of the characters are there and not just the 4. I was very scared that during the whole petrification 2-parter that Snapdragon and Amaryllis were going to be oblivious to it in their video game the whole time, because that's how they were setting it up. But I'm very thankful they got in on the actual narrative. I so desperately want Amaryllis. It's like, that's the crazy thing though. We don't have a flashback to Amaryllis. We don't know why she's mean. All we know is that she's from which country, and that that she's a proprietor of new magic. I think it's old magic, or for fucking stupid hicks like Sage. But we are shown that she is like more chilled out, more cool with them by the end. Like fucking when she's hanging out with Time during the obstacle course episode, and Time's like not having any of her shit, she's like attracted to that. She's like, we're getting shut down. like she's not like upset. She's like, oh, how dare that bitch talk to me like that. She's like, oh, a fellow. It's a fellow Sigma female recognizing another Sigma female. It's like real recognizes real.
She like almost appreciates the craft of the insults. It's like so much so that she wants Time to be her friend and to bully the main cast with her. It's like that's such a great moment of characterization. I absolutely loved that scene.
It's like, it's so weird that she's so multifaceted. Like, it's like she's the bully character, but she's like kind of likes when people stand up to her, at least. Like, if Sage tried to stand up for her, she'd try to put her down immediately. But like when someone else she sees as cool, like Time, stands up to her, she's like, ooh, I like this one.
And like I feel like if Sage had like actual, like if she insulted Amaryllis in a way that was clever in Amaryllis's mind, that maybe Amaryllis would actually appreciate that, if not anything else about her.
Well, as much as I would just like to spend the remaining time that we have talking about how perfect Amaryllis is, we will have to move on. I feel like we should start wrapping things up, so let's go in with the final few episodes, unless you had any more general thoughts about the show.
The only sort of general thoughts, I guess these aren't general, but they're like a few, you could call them plot holes or just really stupid writing. The one that bothered me the most was that when they're in the healing fountain episode, where like they're going to the healing fountain and trying to find out like why the water is all leaving, and you know they get stuck in the cave, right? And this water, it like apparently, you know, if you drink it, it'll heal your wounds, and that it's, you know, very valuable water. And so you see a character dump their hand into the water, you know, put it in a vial and put the cap on and whatever. And so, you know, eventually they get stuck in the cave and they're like, well, what do we do now? And one of, actually, Parsley has a dragon egg, and the characters start putting stuff together like, wait, it's healing water, which means, you know, it heals your wounds by propelling life forward. So if we put the dragon egg in there, it'll get older. And it's like, bullshit. You put your hand in there and it didn't get any older. You're just trying to be clever and all semantic-y. And it's like, no, I'm not buying that. What if you drank the water? Why did it just heal your wounds instead of turning you into a grandma? It's, I guess, a case of the powers of the water not being explained enough, to where it just seems kind of ridiculous that this water would propel a dragon forward to the end of its life. And it's like, this could have been cleared up with a simple, oh, if you're born in the water, then your life will go by incredibly quickly. Like, that's all it would have taken for me to be like, okay, I buy into it now.
I did not think of that until you pointed it out, and now that you pointed it out, I'm upset about it. Because, yeah, when they have Rosemary drink the water to heal her wound, like, I guess that maybe it's selective, but that's just kind of lazy writing. Like, I think when they said propel life forward, it's like it causes every human's natural healing factor to accelerate far beyond the norm and speed up the process. So it's like it sped up Rosemary's wound from open to closed, and therefore it sped up the dragon egg from egg to full-grown dragon. I did find it a little weird also at the end, where maybe if you I don't know, once again, they didn't explain it. If they submerge themselves in it, I guess it's like you live a very short life, because when the dragon takes him home, all of his skin melts off and he's just a skeleton and he explodes into stars. And like, what the fuck was up with that?
I guess
they give no explanation as to why that happened.
I guess it's just trying to be all artsful and stuff. I don't know. The water is too poorly explained for me to really buy into the dragon exploding into stars. And then the one other plot hole, I guess, it's not really a plot hole, but more just a nitpick, is that, so, what the fuck was his name? The white-haired guy in the final episode, who, like, really likes killing people.
Mandrake?
Drake.
The Mandrake?
Yeah. Mandrake, yeah. So, he can shapeshift into people, and so, you know, he shapeshifts them, and his voice changes to that of the person that he is transformed into. Except in one instance where he turns into the Catgirl lady while he's telling her to die or whatever, and his voice just stays the same for no reason. And it's like, what, can he control whose voice
I feel like
he's taking, or is it just...
I think he could probably control it.
I don't know. It stuck out to
I think
me.
he'd probably control it. I feel like that one's not worth getting like too up in arms about.
It just bothered me. It was like,
I feel like that
the lack of consistency.
I'm more upset by that time where he disguised himself as Lavender, as Rosemary's mother, to lure her down into a chamber in the school and like pretend to console her, and it's a real happy moment. And then she pulls out, or he rather pulls out a knife from his sheath, as about to stab Rosemary in the back until he mentions Caraway, or about like the other students and like who else knows about the rot. And like, there's literally no reason why after Rosemary has revealed all that information that Mandrake has to leave her alive. Why the fuck didn't he kill her?
My assumption...
He could have so easily killed her, hid that body.
My assumption was that maybe he thought there was information he was missing out on. And that is more just frustrating from the viewer's perspective, because we know, like, oh, there's nothing more to it. Rosemary really did spill everything.
But they've already established that Rosemary is one of the characters that needs to die, and has directly gone opposed to the members of the Triumvirate with where she fought Olive. So what is the benefit to leaving her alive even after extracting all that information from her? Mandrake got all the information that he needed, not even voluntarily, from her. So why couldn't you be like, okay, thanks, by the way, just kill her right then and there, keep her body down in the chamber where no one would probably think to look, and then start resuming his plan of he could lure all of the students and teachers down into the basement or the furnace or whatever to burn down the whole school with them trapped inside, and then go kill the other three.
I forget what caused...
What the fuck?
What caused Rosemary to separate from Mandrake after he, like, threatens to stab her behind her back?
I believe she mentions Caraway and like all the other students who know about the rot, which is not the entire student body, but Mandrake is just such a straight killing male boy, because naturally, so he just wants to kill as many people as possible, so he's trying to burn the whole school down. So once he hears all that information, then he leaves her, and it's like,
okay,
he could have easily just killed
dumb,
her
then.
and then burned
Yeah,
down
I
the
had
school.
forgotten what caused them
Like,
to part. So yeah, that's pretty dumb.
It's literally plot armor.
It is.
They have a big fight. Olive changes sides. She does end up getting arrested for her crimes, but it looks like she might be getting off better than the Mandrake is, because plot twist, when brought to the Triumvirate and they're asking the person bringing in Mandrake to be judged, they ask, what should we do with him? And then big reveal, Lavender is with the Triumvirate. Lavender is evil. And she's like, execute him. And I burst out laughing.
You did?
What a fucking stupid plot twist.
I thought it was fine.
Literal season 2 bait.
It's fine.
Horrible fucking twist. Literally, okay, all right, please enlighten me. Maybe you picked up on something I didn't. At what point did they ever even drop the faintest hint that she is evil, aside from she's just been gone for a long time?
They never did.
It's literally a twist for having a twist's sake.
I mean, yeah, true.
And I can hear the people in the comments now being like, oh, maybe she's corrupted. Hint at that.
If she is,
you can't just, because they
if
don't.
If she is corrupted, that would make the twist stupid, and I'd hate it.
Then, like, yeah, either hint at it or fucking give us, like, they don't drop any hints. Like, maybe she, like, this is literally 100% not the case at all. There's no way Lavender is actually evil. But, like, what in hypothetical alternate dimension, what if Lavender really was evil the whole time? Why couldn't we have flashbacks? We get flashbacks of Lavender with Rosemary, and she's always the sweetest, kindest, caring mother. why can't we just get like she says something that's like maybe a little morally gray. Maybe she like teaches like, hey, listen, sometimes you gotta like fucking kill someone or something because it's like it's your life versus their life. Why couldn't literally anything? This twist comes out of fucking nowhere. It's as bad as like a modern Disney movie twist villain, and it's awful. And I burst out.
To be
laughing.
fair, it would be a lot better if she had a few morally gray lines, and where it's like, oh, can she be trusted? Oh, but she's like so nice. So, you know, it's just a really down to earth lesson.
You are given literally zero reason to doubt her.
I don't know. I don't.
She's just she is supposed to be.
I don't hate it, but if she is just corrupted, then bad. Which she probably is. Let's be real.
Well, we'll never know because literally no way is this show getting a second season because it's probably not worth the resources for this at best middling, at worst bad production, which is so obviously half-baked despite the fact that they had all that extra time in the that they could have done to maybe tighten up the animation, tighten up the script and the screenplay, but here we are.
So do you have anything else to say about High Guardian shite?
Just a couple more notes. Sage gets to have her hair cut and a design change because this is supposed to be a quote anime. Because it's a thing where the female character cuts her hair to show her maturity, and the anime does it, so we have to do it. God
Her
damn it.
design with her haircut is way worse than the one with her hair intact.
Yeah. I also love, I don't know if you noticed this, like, when at the end of the whole battle where Rosemary is using her sword to cut the rest of Sage's hair so it looks more even. I love that, like, we see the hair before it's in its final state, and it's like, it's all rough and uneven and shaggy, and then she, like, turns around out of frame, and she's like, well, how does it look? And her hair is perfectly rounded. They don't use any product or any kind of, like, lotion or anything like that to make it look different. She's just been using a sword to cut it the whole time, and apparently it has the magic power to not only heal itself when damaged, but apparently heal hair to make it look smooth and rounded out. It's like fucking princess hair, and I laughed at that too.
That was stupid, and I thought what she was cutting, it would be like sort of like cut like straight around the like chin neck area, instead of like round and poofy. And that would have actually looked really cute and like nice and like be an actual good design. But with the rounds and poofiness, it's just kind of like goofy and also ugly looking.
Now, we already know that Sage, it's not out of the question that she might have a crush on Rosemary. And we already know that when you have a lesbian character, the shorter their hair, the more likely gay they are. So now she's just one step closer to getting that butch cut that her cousin has, who we know is gay, and then she'll truly have reached the final form of lesbianism.
The shorter the hair, the more the gay. A law of the universe indeed.
I half joke, but there is a somewhat startling connection between, well, it's the butch lesbian design that is like, it's a style. It's not really my thing, but you know, live and let live, I suppose. The last note that I have about this show is that Rosemary fucking like comes up with the team name at the very end of the show, just before the end, and she's like, well done, High Guardian Spice, and the credits roll. I didn't make it up. They just say, wow, that's a cool team name. And then they fucking roll the credits one last time. And I laughed because that it's literally the cinema synth
That is
thing.
also incredibly goofy, admittedly. The last episode does have quite a bit of
just to show you how
cheese factor.
goofy. Just to show you how goofy and generic the show is, they literally cut to credits when they finally say the name of the show for the first time. Even though their names are herbs and not spices. More like they were high when they were writing it.
You want to know what would have made that scene work? Is if they've made their team name High Guardian Herb.
And then they were like, huh, that doesn't really roll off the tongue. Well, they could be used as spices instead, so what about High Guardian Spice?
Well, that would have made it cheesy again.
Yeah, well, maybe then Writer's Workshop, we'll workshop it. So that is High Guardian Spice in a 3-hour nutshell. It's not a very good show. I would give it a 3 out of 10. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. There is the foundation. They have proven themselves capable of making possibly something good, as most seen with Amaryllis. They have the potential. They just chose not to use it more often than not.
I would give it a 4 out of 10. It's fine in a lot of areas, but then there's all the goofiness and just kind of general lack of realization. It's not horrible. It's got the base stirring pot sort of right, and it's got Amaryllis, but it also does not do anything special or interesting, even remotely. Except for having Amaryllis.
As far as Crunchyroll originals go, you can do a whole lot worse. This is no X-Arm, where it's so horribly incompetently made that you can point to literally every part of it and explain why it doesn't work. Whereas you can point to some things in High Guardian Spice and be like, I can see what they were going for, and they did succeed in a few areas, but overall, it is worse than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I'd say that's basically High Guardian Spice summarized. The core problem with the show.
So now the $1 million question, should you watch High
No.
Guardian Spice? If you are an individual watcher of Western animation or anime or whatever, if you were just a casual media consumer, I would recommend 100 other Western cartoons before High Guardian Spice. Even comparatively contemporary in genre ones, I would recommend fucking The Owl House, which is basically this show, but a little different and infinitely better. I would fucking recommend Little Witch Academia 1,000 times before High Guardian Spice, because that's what this show most reminded me of while watching it. And this whole time I was thinking, man, Little Witch Academia was twice the length, and yet in its first half still had like 12 times as much to say. And it was actually competently put together. Not even just competently. It was Trigger. It was Yo Yoshinari. They went fucking above and beyond. And it does have some slice of life filler elements. Like, you could cut some episodes out of Little Witch Academia and have it not be necessary towards the grander narrative, but at least that enjoyment from those more casual, laid-back filler episodes that you get watching it is infinitely more enjoyable than the ones you would get from this show, which is only 12 episodes. So hacking the filler episodes out of this show would be like hacking off a limb. So, like, why would you do that? Like, you've already, it's like hacking a limb off of a handicapped dude. Like, their legs already don't work. Now you want to take an arm off too? Bad idea.
What a colorful analogy.
Yeah, put that on your fucking Blu-ray box, Crunchyroll. High Guardian Spice. It's like hacking the arm off a handicapped dude. Now, if you are watching this with your buddies to take the piss out of it, you could find worse shows to make fun of more, but you will definitely get some enjoyment out of it if you want to consume it
That is a
way.
valid way to consume it. Just make sure you're like drunk or something.
Don't try to don't devote more time to this than you need to. Like, both of us agree that if not for the podcast, we would not watch the entire show.
No way. I found myself struggling to care around episode 5 or 6, and even like after episode 1, I was like, this isn't gonna be good. I would have dropped it by now.
Yep, so at the end of the day, 3 out of 10 from me, 4 out of 10 from you. Ray Rodriguez, you tried your best, but your best looks like just wasn't enough. Katie McVeigh, if you're listening, please pursue a career in voice acting. You are talented. If you're able to somehow buy the rights to Amaryllis from the show and put her in another show, I will help personally fund that business expense. And I think that's all I have left to say. And that's another episode of Castaway Anime in the books. I've been NeonManta. You can find me on Twitter at NeonManta, on the YouTube channel you are currently watching, and at Twitch at Neon_Manta. Evan, you can't find. Not for now, at least. Maybe one day you will bless us.
Well,
with
you
your
see,
presence
I
again.
have been traveling the Saharan desert, so if you're willing to come over here, you can see me. Probably thirsting to death, but you can see me.
Is that the overarching narrative that we're gonna go for the lore
Yes,
of the podcast,
I am-
that you're in the Saharan
I am on a
desert?
journey to find myself.
It's okay. I'll plug the Bang Dream video that you're working on for someone else.
Yeah, whenever that comes out, it should be out like in a few days at most. Which, by the way, I did finish my editing for. You can find the channel Vlusky the Husky down below in the description, probably, or a pinned comment, I don't know. And yeah, hopefully, probably, the most recent upload, as of this podcast coming out, will be a video that I worked on with my editing for about 5 minutes of the runtime, so hopefully you can find out which one that is.
Alright, this has been Castaway Anime, and you'll see us next time.